Chapter 1767. In a short 100 breaths of time, the entire canyon was covered by gray clouds. Endless gray clouds gathered together, spinning rapidly, forming a black vortex with a radius of 100 miles. Purple and blue lightning arcs flickered continuously in the pitch-black vortex, lighting up with dazzling lightning. An incomparably violent hurricane pressed down, blowing away the heavenly fire in the canyon. Yeya and the 5 bandits were busy setting up the grand array, and it was about to be completed. Suddenly seeing the strange phenomenon in the sky, everyone stopped and revealed a bewildered expression. What's going on? Why did a heaven and earth phenomenon suddenly appear? Heavens! Those black clouds filling the sky are clearly tribulation cloud. Is someone going to transcend tribulation? Impossible. Among us, even if someone is going to transcend tribulation, they have to wait several decades, right? Tribulation clouds and heavenly lightning appearing at the same time, someone is definitely going to transcend tribulation. If the person transcending tribulation isn't us, then it's very likely to be that man and woman. No wonder they suddenly changed direction and ran to hide in this canyon. Turns out they want to transcend tribulation here. Ha ha ha, it's really heaven's will. Looks like we don't need to make a move. That young man and woman are going to die under the heavenly tribulation. The bandits discussed telepathically. They were all gloating and excited. Yeya also had the same thought, a mocking sneer at the corners of his mouth, waiting to watch a good show. He looked down at the canyon from above and muttered to himself, "Heaven is helping me. Looks like I don't need to make a move. Those 2 little bastards are going to turn to ashes under the heavenly tribulation soon." After saying that, he used divine sense voice transmission to order the 5 bandits, "Everyone, no need to perfect the grand array. Even if it's set up, it will be destroyed by the heavenly tribulation. You guys stay by the 5 poison token and keep an eye on the movements in the canyon at all times. Keep an eye on those 2 fellows for me. If they are killed by the heavenly tribulation, it's fine. If they luckily transcend the heavenly tribulation, you guys immediately make a move and be sure to kill them." The 5 bandits hurriedly agreeing very readily. Probably in their minds, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao absolutely could not transcend the heavenly tribulation and would definitely be killed by the heavenly lightning. After all, every martial artist would choose an absolutely safe place to avoid being disturbed when transcending tribulation. Even so, there was still a slim chance of survival under the heavenly tribulation. Everyone was certain that there was no need for them to make a move today. They only needed to watch the show. The tribulation cloud vortex and lightning above the canyon became more and more dazzling and terrifying. Even from thousands of miles away, one could clearly see the tribulation clouds and lightning in the sky. 2 groups of tribulation transcendence experts happened to pass by. One of the groups consisted of 3 women. The leader was an old granny with a head full of white hair. She was holding a golden dragon-head walking stick. Following behind her was a middle-aged woman in luxurious clothes and a young woman with a pretty face and an icy temperament. When the 3 of them saw the tribulation clouds and lightning in the sky, they secretly discussed for a while before rushing in the direction of the tribulation cloud vortex. The other group consisted of 2 men. The leader was a white-haired old man wearing a purple robe. He held a golden horsetail whisk in his hand and wore a crown with 3 flowers and 7 stars on his head. Behind him was a young man dressed in black. He was tall and sturdy and had a valiant aura. The 2 of them were hurrying through the sea of fire when they suddenly saw the tribulation clouds and lightning in the sky. The purple-robed old man immediately stopped. He frowned as he looked at the tribulation clouds in the sky. He muttered to himself in surprise, "Someone is actually transcending tribulation in the flaming mountain? Are they tired of living?" The young man also raised his head to look at the sky, revealing a shocked expression. He said in disbelief, "The flaming mountain is so dangerous, yet there is actually someone who dares to transcend tribulation here. Even if one transcends tribulation in a safe place, it is still a slim chance of survival. To transcend tribulation in such a dangerous environment, wouldn't one die without a doubt?" After saying that, the young man looked at the purple-robed old man and asked, "Marshal Uncle Brightsword, this kind of thing is really rare. Should we go over and take a look?" The purple-robed old man was Marshal Lord Brightsword. He frowned and thought for a moment before saying hesitantly, "Chen Yu, we still have business to do." The young man named Chen Yu bowed and said, "Martial uncle, so many experts are searching for the glazed fire dragon's lair, but there is no result. Even if we rush over, what's the use? Now that someone is transcending tribulation in the flaming mountain, this kind of thing is very rare. Don't you want to go and take a look? Perhaps the person transcending tribulation is very confident and is a talented person." Chen Yu was curious and wanted to see what was going on, so he tried his best to arouse Martial Lord Brightsword's interest. Martial Lord Brightsword understood his thoughts and no longer refused. He chuckled and said, "Sigh, you brat, you clearly want to go and watch the show, yet you're still beating around the bush." Chen Yu pretended to be simple and honest and asked tentatively, "Martial Uncle Brightsword, does that mean you agree? Let's go and take a look." "It won't take long." Martial Lord Brightsword stroked his beard and nodded in agreement. Soon after, an old man and a young man flew over the sea of fire and rushed to the place where the tribulation cloud vortex appeared. In a cave deep in the canyon. Ji Tianxing had already circulated his energy and adjusted his breathing for a quarter of an hour, raising his cultivation and mental state to the peak. He was already prepared to welcome the heavenly tribulation. At this moment, the tribulation cloud vortex high in the sky had already formed. It had a radius of 100 miles and was as black as ink. Billions of lightning bolts flickered in the vortex and were about to condense into heavenly lightning that could destroy the heavens and earth. Ji Tianxing stopped circulating his energy and opened his eyes to look at Yun Yarrow at the entrance of the cave. He revealed a smile and warned, Yarrow, you don't have to worry about me. I'll be fine. Quickly leave this canyon and hide further away. I'm afraid that the heavenly tribulation will affect you." Yun Yarrow looked at the tribulation cloud in the sky and felt a little nervous. She said with a heart full of worry, "Tianxing, compared to my tribulation cloud, your tribulation cloud is condensing faster and has a wider range. Its power is definitely several times stronger. You must not be careless, and you must not have any accidents." Ji Tianxing understood her feelings, so he nodded and said, "All right, I'll be careful. Don't worry, don't help me, or else the consequences will be unimaginable." Yun Yarrow nodded with a solemn expression, then turned around and left. For safety's sake, she entered the reverse water divine sword and manipulated it to become the size of an embroidery needle. She quietly hid on a mountain peak 50 miles away. At such a close distance, she could watch Ji Tianxing transcend the tribulation and protect Ji Tianxing. If Ji Tianxing's life was in danger, she would save him even if she was killed by the heavenly lightning. She had just found a place to hide and manipulated the reverse water divine sword to hide in the rock layer when Ji Tianxing's heavenly tribulation began. Boom. Chapter 1768. The dazzling purple lightning tore through the sky like a sharp sword and pierced into the depths of the canyon. A sacred and mighty invisible pressure pressed down from the sky and shrouded the entire canyon. Yun Yarrow, Yi and the 5 bandits were all shrouded by the invisible force and their faces changed immediately. "Oh my God! The first heavenly thunder is hundreds of feet long and has such a terrifying power. That kid hasn't reached the crossing calamity realm yet, has he? How can the heavenly thunder he triggered be comparable to a 4th stage crossing calamity realm expert? What a terrifying heavenly thunder. It actually made my mind tremble. This is incredible. It's too terrifying. Even when I was crossing the calamity realm, the heavenly thunder was not so powerful." Everyone was shocked. They stared at the heavenly thunder and couldn't wait to see the result. Ji Tianxing was still standing in the cave with a calm and composed posture, as if he didn't care about the heavenly thunder at all. In the next moment, there was a loud explosion that shook the sky. The hundreds of feet-long purple heavenly thunder blasted the ground apart and instantly destroyed the cave where Ji Tianxing was. The lightning engulfed his figure, and an endless amount of gravel and dust flew in all directions. The area within 100 miles became chaotic and was covered by the purple heavenly thunder. After a long time, the heavenly thunder and smoke dissipated and the canyon returned to calm. Everyone looked at the bottom of the canyon and saw that the ground was full of cracks and there was a huge black pit in the middle. Right above the deep pit, Ji Tianxing, in a white robe, was standing in the sky unscathed. No one knew how he blocked the heavenly thunder. No one knew that he not only blocked the heavenly thunder, but also absorbed most of its power. Yaa and the 5 bandits were dumbfounded and let out an incredulous roar. How is this possible? That kid actually blocked the heavenly thunder? Oh my God! That's the heavenly thunder that can only be triggered by a 4th or 5th stage crossing Calamity Realm expert. How did he block it? That kid is really a monster. He's not human at all. Only Yun Yarrow looked relieved. She secretly heaved a sigh of relief and felt gratified for Ji Tianqing. At this moment, the second heavenly thunder was condensed in the tribulation cloud vortex. Boom! Following an explosion that shook the 9 heavens, a dark blue pillar of lightning shot down from the tribulation cloud vortex. This bolt of heavenly lightning was 1,500 feet long, and its might was more than 2 times stronger than the first one. In the blink of an eye, the lightning beam struck the depths of the canyon and engulfed Ji Tianqing's figure. Yun Yarrow's heart was in her throat again. She looked worried and shouted in her heart, "Why is this happening? Why was Tianqing's heavenly tribulation so terrifying? Back when I was transcending my tribulation, the 7th bolt of lightning was less than 300 meters. His first heavenly thunder was 300 meters long, and the power of his second heavenly thunder was even more terrifying. Why is God so unfair to him?" Yaa and the 5 bandits held their breaths nervously, waiting for the bolt of lightning to strike. They were all praying in their hearts. They really wanted to see Ji Tianqing's tragic state of being killed by the heavenly thunder. At the same time, the 3 women, Bright Sword Martial Lord, and the others had already rushed to the vicinity of the canyon. Both groups of people saw the tribulation cloud vortex with a radius of 100 miles with their own eyes, as well as the terrifying heavenly thunder. Seeing this scene, Bright Sword Martial Lord and the white-haired old woman made a judgment almost at the same time. Such a huge tribulation cloud vortex and such a terrifying heavenly thunder. It must be a 5th-level tribulation transcendence realm expert transcending the tribulation here. The 2 groups of people rushed to the east and west sides of the canyon. They hid on the mountain peak and silently observed the situation in the canyon. Not long after, the rubble, smoke, and blue lightning arcs that covered the sky dissipated. Ji Tianqing's figure appeared. He was still standing in the air, unharmed. He even maintained his posture of lying on his back and hugging the sky with his arms outstretched. Looking at his movements, it was as if he was hugging the heavenly thunder that fell from the sky. He looked like he was enjoying it very much. No one noticed that the 3rd eye on his forehead flashed with a dark blue light and quickly closed. Everyone was dumbfounded. Their faces were full of horror. Especially Bright Sword Martial Lord, Chen Yu, and the 3 women. They were stunned on the spot, and their expressions were exceptionally wonderful. The white-haired old woman leaned on her walking stick and stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. After a long silence, she let out a long sigh. Heavens! There are actually times when I misjudge. I originally thought that the person transcending the tribulation must have reached the 5th stage. I didn't expect it to be a 9th-level Essence Soul Realm kid. His first tribulation attracted such a terrifying heavenly thunder. What kind of genius is this? The middle-aged woman's face was also filled with shock. She nodded repeatedly and said, "Madam Jin, it seems that we didn't come here in vain. Such a young genius is definitely one that only appears once in 100 years. Even the young woman with a beautiful face and an ice-cold temperament stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. Her handsome face was filled with amazement. What a powerful talent. He actually dares to treat the heavenly thunder as nothing. This person is so monstrous. He definitely isn't a nobody." The middle-aged woman glanced at her and joked with a smile, "Rong that kid looks handsome and has extraordinary talent. He must be a 1 in a million talent. Only a genius like him is worthy of you. If he succeeds in transcending the tribulation, I will be your matchmaker. How about it?" A hint of shyness flashed through the young woman's eyes, but her expression was still calm. She said in a calm tone, "Rong will follow your decision. But it's still too early to say this. It's not too late to wait until that young master succeeds in transcending the tribulation." Hearing her answer, the middle-aged woman smiled even more and joked, Our Ronga has always been proud and arrogant. She doesn't put men of the same generation in her eyes and speaks bluntly to anyone. I didn't expect to meet that white-robed young master today. Finally, someone can enter Ronga's eyes. It's really not easy. The young woman's temperament was cold, indifferent, and arrogant. How could she stand such teasing from her master's wife? Her cheeks immediately flushed red. She turned her head away in embarrassment and pursed her lips tightly without speaking. Madame Jin glanced at the middle-aged woman and pretended to cough. She reminded, "Gu, Ronga is thin-skinned. Don't make fun of her. Let's watch that young master transcend the tribulation first. He's not simple. This heavenly tribulation is very likely to be unprecedented. It's our honor to be able to witness it with our own eyes." Hearing Madame Jin's solemn tone, the middle-aged woman also stopped smiling and looked at Ji Tianxing attentively. Ronga's embarrassment eased a lot. She also looked at Ji Tianxing with rapt attention, for fear of missing any details. On the other side, the faces of Martial Lord Brightsword and Chen Yu became rather awkward and ugly. Chen Yu stared at Ji Tianxing with wide eyes and exclaimed in disbelief, "It's actually him? That bastard who rudely offended Martial Uncle? Why did he come here and even transcend the tribulation here?" Martial Lord Brightsword also looked at Ji Tianxing with a complicated expression. His expression became rather strange. He was silent for a long time before he stroked his beard and said, "No wonder that kid is so arrogant and condescending. It turns out that he does have some ability. However, he's too young after all. He hasn't reached the tribulation realm yet. It's too early to be happy. How can the heavenly tribulation be so easy to pass? No matter how outstanding his talent is, if he can't pass the heavenly tribulation, he will be annihilated." Hearing Martial Lord Brightsword's words, Chen Yu's mood immediately relaxed a lot. That inexplicable jealousy also dissipated a lot. He hurriedly cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Martial Uncle is right. The tribulation realm is the biggest hurdle in a martial artist's life. If you can cross it, you will soar to the ninth heaven. If you can't, you will vanish into thin air." Chapter 1769. Just as everyone was secretly discussing, another earth-shattering explosion erupted. Kaboom! A third bolt of heavenly lightning brewed in the tribulation cloud vortex. A 200-foot-long dark golden lightning bolt struck towards Ji Tianxing in the canyon. In that instant, golden light shone for hundreds of miles, illuminating the dark sky. The terrifying divine might of lightning suppressed the entire canyon, causing everyone's bodies to tremble, revealing a look of fear and dread. No one had expected that Ji Tianxing's third bolt of heavenly lightning would be so terrifying. Such a powerful heavenly lightning could only be triggered by a 6th-level tribulation transcendence realm expert. The hearts of Yun Yarrow, Madame Jin, and the others immediately rose to their throats as they broke out in cold sweat for Ji Tianxing. Eya, the 5 bandits, Brightsword Martial Lord, and the others held their breaths as they stared at the canyon. They saw that Ji Tianxing still did not take out his weapon to block. He looked up at the sky and waved his arms to cast a secret technique to welcome the descent of the golden heavenly lightning. Boom! Amidst the earth-shaking explosion, the dark golden pillar of lightning drowned him and struck the canyon. On the ground formed by golden rocks, a huge pit with a radius of 10 miles was immediately created, and countless rubble collapsed. Dozens of wide ravines split open in all directions, almost covering the entire canyon. Stone fragments and smoke rose into the air, covering the sky for 100 miles. After a long time, the canyon regained its clarity, and Ji Tianxing's figure appeared again. He was still in his snow-white robe, neat and tidy, and his expression was very calm. The golden heavenly lightning just now had been easily resolved by him without any effort. Seeing this scene, Eya and the bandits were shocked to the point of numbness. When they came back to their senses, they cursed angrily. "Damn bastard, he actually blocked the heavenly lightning so easily again. What the hell? Even we might not be able to block such a terrifying heavenly lightning. How could he be safe and sound? It's too damn strange. Second leader, we can't wait any longer. If we allow that kid to successfully overcome the heavenly tribulation, I'm afraid it won't be easy to kill him." When Yu heard the bandits' telepathic messages, he secretly clenched his fists as a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. However, after some consideration, he decided not to make a move for the time being. Everyone, calm down and wait patiently for a moment. The first 3 heavenly thunders are the simplest, but the later ones will become more and more powerful. The criminals understood what he meant, so they suppressed their anxiety and worry and continued to observe the situation. At this moment, the tribulation cloud vortex high in the sky began to change. The tribulation clouds became even darker, and the wind became even more piercingly cold. The tribulation cloud's whirlpool spun even faster. Within the vortex, purple, blue, gold, and crimson lights flickered continuously. Not long after, the 4th bolt of lightning appeared. Boom! It was a 300-meter-long lightning pillar formed by 3 different colored lightning bolts, crimson heavenly flames, and white gales. This bolt of heavenly lightning carried the power to destroy the heavens and earth as it ruthlessly struck towards Ji Tianxing in the canyon. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the crowd who were secretly watching all changed drastically as they widened their eyes in shock. No. How could this be? It's only the 4th bolt of heavenly lightning, how could it be so powerful? Yun Yao's heart was burning with worry and her face was as pale as paper. She was extremely worried for Ji Tianxing. Madame Jin, Ronga, and the other 2 also revealed puzzled and shocked expressions as they exclaimed repeatedly. Too terrifying. There are actually 3 types of heavenly lightning, as well as astral winds and heavenly flames. Just what level has that kid's talent reached? In my impression, such a terrifying heavenly lightning has never appeared in the past few hundred years. If the 4th bolt of heavenly lightning is already so terrifying, then how shocking would the heavenly lightning after that be? The expressions of Bright Sword Martial Lord and Chen Yu became increasingly unsightly. Especially Honorable Sword Martial Lord. Just now, he had solemnly vowed that Ji Tianxing was happy too early. However, the appearance of the 4th bolt of heavenly lightning proved that Ji Tianxing's talent far exceeded everyone's imagination. He only felt his old face burning and a hint of embarrassment flashed across his eyes. However, Chen Yu did not notice Bright Sword Martial Lord's expression. His eyes stared fixedly at Ji Tianxing, revealing a look of intense jealousy. Regardless of whether Ji Tianxing could block this bolt of heavenly lightning or not, for him to be able to trigger such a terrifying bolt of heavenly lightning, it proved that his talent was outstanding and that he was a peerless genius. This already made Chen Yu extremely jealous. In the next instant, the 5-colored heavenly lightning struck Ji Tianxing, drowning his figure. At the critical moment, he did not cast a spell to devour the power of lightning. After all, it was too dangerous. He chose to use the Kenshin battle robe, turning it into a pair of golden wings to protect himself. The destructive 5-colored divine lightning struck the golden wings, smashing him into the deep pit at the bottom of the valley. The charred pit on the ground instantly expanded by more than 2 times. The area within 100 miles of the pit was completely turned into ruins. Not even a millstone-sized stone could be found. Smoke, dust, and lightning covered the sky and lasted for a long time before dissipating. Everyone stuck their heads out and looked down, searching for Ji Tianxing's trace. Yi and the bandits were all secretly looking forward to it and were excited as they asked each other through voice transmission. How is it? Did you find that kid? Such a terrifying heavenly lightning, he definitely can't withstand it. He was most likely struck to death, right? If it were us, we would have been killed by that bolt of heavenly lightning. Even if that kid didn't die, he would definitely be seriously injured. Everyone, quickly find his corpse. The second leader has instructed that if he's alive, we want to see him. If he's dead, we want to see his corpse. However, just as the bandits were discussing, a golden light flew out from the ruins. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing flapped his golden wings and flew into the sky safely, appearing in front of everyone's eyes. Immediately, everyone was in an uproar again, revealing complicated expressions. Some cursed angrily, some heaved a sigh of relief, and some exclaimed in surprise. Ji Tianxing had already sensed that something was amiss and found that there were several groups of powerhouses hiding around the valley. However, he didn't care and continued to focus on transcending the tribulation. He had already expected that the commotion caused by his tribulation would definitely alarm many powerhouses and attract countless people to watch. A moment later, the fifth bolt of heavenly lightning condensed in the vortex of tribulation clouds and struck down. Kaboom! Ji Tianxing used the same trick and used the golden rock wings again to protect himself. The 4,000 feet long five-colored heavenly lightning was twice as powerful as before and instantly struck him. He was struck into the ruins again, smashing deep into the ground. The entire valley was destroyed by the lightning and turned into scorched ruins hundreds of miles wide. Thunder and wind surged. The 1,000-feet-long mountain ranges on both sides of the valley were also affected by the huge impact. They shook violently and huge cracks appeared. Chapter 1770. Although Yi Ya and the bandits all hoped that Ji Tianxing would be killed by the lightning. However, what happened before made them understand that Ji Tianxing was an incomparably monstrous genius. He would not die so easily. They stared at the ruins in the canyon, using their divine senses to search for Ji Tianxing's figure. Not long after, shattering sounds came from the ruins, and countless gravel was sent flying. A golden light flew out from the ruins and returned to the sky. Without a doubt, Ji Tianxing successfully blocked the fifth bolt of lightning, and he was still uninjured. His expression and aura of magic power didn't change much. However, the golden wings on his back dimmed a bit. Clearly, he used up quite a bit of power. Seeing that, Yi Ya and the bandits all revealed heavy disappointment. Yun Yarrow and Madame Jin were relieved of a heavy burden as they secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The middle-aged woman, Rong the honorable sword martial lord, and the others were almost numb from the shock. They didn't know what to say. At that moment, the sixth bolt of lightning arrived as scheduled. Boom. The 500-feet-long pillar of lightning was formed by the convergence of 6 colors. Not only were there 3 types of lightning, there was also skyfire, astral wind, and dark green poison. That poison was formed by the convergence of the power of the world. It was a rare poison of the world from ancient to modern times. When they saw that bolt of lightning appear, ordinary experts could only feel shock from its horrifying power. But Madame Jin and Yi Ya, the knowledgeable martial lords, widened their eyes in shock, as if they saw a ghost. Heavens! It's actually 6 types of lightning. This boy is definitely the #1 genius who shakes the ancients and dazzles the contemporaries. This is too unbelievable. I actually saw a miracle with my own eyes. In the past 1,000 years, there were only 2 people who could trigger 6 types of lightning. This boy is actually one of them. When the middle-aged woman and Rong heard Madame Jin's exclamation, they immediately turned their heads to look at her, revealing puzzled gazes. However, Madame Jin stared straight at the bolt of lightning without any intention to explain. Boom. Following a huge explosion that shook the universe, the canyon with a circumference of 600 miles was destroyed on the spot, becoming a pile of rubble and ruins. In the middle of the ruins, an abyss with a circumference of 50 miles and a depth of 10 miles appeared. More than half of the dark golden mountain ranges on both sides of the valley collapsed as well, sending rocks flying everywhere. Such an earth-shattering power could be clearly heard from thousands of miles away. Many onlookers had no choice but to retreat again, keeping a distance of 100 miles from Ji Tianxing. When the smoke and dust dissipated, a dim golden light flew out from the abyss in the ruins. Shua. After the golden light faded, the white-robed Ji Tianxing once again appeared in the sky. The golden wings on his back had already dimmed. It was obvious that he had used up all his energy. He had no choice but to retract his golden wings and take out the sword of burial of heaven. He stood above the ruins with his left hand behind his back and his right hand holding the sword of burial of heaven. He looked up at the tribulation cloud vortex. His handsome and resolute face revealed a strong sense of confidence. His deep and boundless eyes also revealed an incomparably resolute look. 100 miles away, Rong's eyes were fixed on him. All her attention was attracted by his figure, unable to move away. Grandma Jin and the middle-aged woman also revealed gratified and amazed expressions. They were full of expectations and appreciation for Ji Tianxing. Grandma Jin raised her golden walking stick and pointed at the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky. She said excitedly, It's already rare for this person to be able to survive 6 bolts of lightning unscathed. The fact that the tribulation cloud vortex hasn't dissipated means that he's going to attract the 7th bolt of lightning. A person who can attract 6 bolts of lightning is a once-in-a-century genius. A person who can attract the 7th and 8th bolts of lightning is a once-in-a-millennium genius. The middle-aged woman nodded slightly and said excitedly, if the white-robed man can safely survive 6 bolts of lightning, he'll definitely be able to survive the 7th bolt of lightning. Even if he's severely injured, he'll be fine. There hasn't been such a genius in our vast divine nation for thousands of years. I've heard that there was a first disciple of God on Mount God Bestowment who was highly valued by the Divine Master and was praised as a once-in-a-millennium genius. It's a pity that the first disciple of God left Mount God Bestowment for some unknown reason. Alas! Speaking of this, the middle-aged woman sighed regretfully, feeling rather regretful. Ronga didn't even turn her head. She stared at Ji Tianxing and said coldly, that first disciple of God is probably just an undeserved reputation. Moreover, he betrayed the divine nation and has an inferior personality. This white-robed man, on the other hand, is handsome and has an outstanding temperament. He must be a noble and loyal genius. Grandma Jin's heart suddenly moved. She secretly transmitted a message to the middle-aged woman and said, Ji Yu, Ronga only saw the young man from afar, and she's so sure to protect him. I'm afraid that Ronga has fallen in love with him at first sight. If there's a chance, try to match the young man with Ronga. If they can get married, it'll be a great thing for the Divine Nation and the Green Dragon Association. The middle-aged woman bowed slightly and replied, Grandma, don't worry. Ji Yu knows what to do. At this moment, the vortex of tribulation clouds in the sky completed its transformation. What puzzled everyone was that the vortex of tribulation clouds, which was as dark as ink, actually lit up with 7-colored dazzling light. Tens of thousands of 7-colored dazzling lights condensed into 7 brilliant pillars of light, which hung down from the sky like a waterfall. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 7-colored light, with a mysterious and invisible power, hit Ji Tianxing with a loud bang and drowned his figure. However, there was no earth-shattering sound, nor was there a scene of destruction. The 7-colored light burst open and turned into a huge ball of light, enveloping Ji Tianxing and floating above the ruins. The world was quiet, and the air was filled with a strange and mysterious atmosphere. Yi Martial Lord Handsome Sword, and many strong people in the Tribulation Realm were all dumbfounded, and their faces were full of astonishment. Everyone thought that the 7th bolt of heavenly lightning would definitely destroy the heavens and the earth, and its power would be unprecedented. But no one had expected that there would be no heavenly lightning, but 7 pillars of light. The most inconceivable thing was that the 7 pillars of light were so gentle that they didn't seem to have any lethality at all. After everyone came back to their senses, they immediately began to discuss with doubts. It's really too strange. What kind of heavenly tribulation is this? There's not even heavenly lightning. It's really strange. The 7th bolt of heavenly lightning should have destroyed the heavens and the earth. Why is there no movement at all? That kid is a freak, and the heavenly tribulation he triggered is also extremely strange. I've never heard of such a situation. I've read a lot of ancient books, but I've never heard of such a thing. Everyone was puzzled and felt that it was inconceivable. Only Grandma Jin frowned and pondered for a long time. Suddenly, she thought of something, and her expression changed drastically. Her eyes revealed a strong sense of horror. Chapter 1771. 7 Emotions Tribulation? Granny, what's the 7 Emotions Tribulation? The middle-aged woman and Ronga looked at Granny Jin in confusion. Granny Jin was quite excited. Her eyes were bright, and she explained in a serious tone, the so-called 7 Emotions Tribulation refers to the tribulation of 7 emotions and 6 desires. The ancients said that everyone in the world has 7 emotions and 6 desires. That's why there's love, hatred, greed, anger, and madness. If people don't have the 7 emotions and 6 desires, they'll be like plants, and those with high magic power will be saint. When saints are born and are destined to become gods, they'll have to accept the test of God and bear the tribulation of 7 emotions and 6 desires. Hearing Granny Jin's explanation, the middle-aged woman and Ronga were shocked and incredulous. Saints are born. Only those who are destined to become gods can trigger the tribulation of 7 emotions and 6 desires. No wonder I've never heard of the 7 emotions tribulation. Doesn't that mean that white-robed man is a saint and is destined to become a god? His talent and aptitude have actually reached such a terrifying level. Granny Jin nodded slightly and said with a serious expression, I've only seen information about the 7 emotions tribulation in an ancient book. I didn't expect to see this legendary heavenly tribulation with my own eyes today. It said that those who can trigger the 7 emotions tribulation are either world-shaking geniuses or the reincarnation of gods. I don't know if that white-robed man is the former or the latter. The middle-aged woman and Ronga were silent as they stared at the colorful light in the canyon. No matter which answer it was extremely shocking to them. On the other side, Yi and the bandits were all anxious as they discussed telepathically. They didn't know what was going on. Someone suggested to sneak an attack on Ji Tianxing and kill him in one fell swoop. However, Yi considered carefully and decided to continue observing. Time passed quietly. The dazzling 7-colored light in the canyon quietly floated and slowly rotated. Everyone stared at the light secretly, waiting for the result. After about half an hour, the originally calm, colorful light suddenly spun faster. Swoosh, swoosh. The dazzling light surged violently and released thousands of rays of light, illuminating the entire canyon. No one knew what was happening in the colorful light or what Ji Tianxing had experienced. Suddenly, a loud sound burst out and resounded through the sky. Boom! Following a deafening explosion, the rainbow light suddenly shattered, and a dazzling golden light flew out from it. It was that dazzling golden light that had split the entire ball of light into pieces. Countless rainbow-colored fragments scattered in all directions, falling on the ruins. The golden light flew back into the sky and stopped, revealing a white-robed figure. Shua! Everyone took a closer look and saw that it was Ji Tianxing. His clothes were undamaged, but his long hair was a little messy. His face was pale as he panted, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Other than that, he didn't have any obvious injuries. The 7th bolt of heavenly thunder had already been neutralized by him. Seeing this scene, everyone was inexplicably shocked. Madame Jin was the most amazed. Her eyes were full of admiration as she nodded repeatedly and said, "This king really didn't guess wrong. That boy is really a shocking genius and his character is also excellent. A genius who can withstand the test of the 7 emotions tribulation must have a firm will and a loyal heart. He has indeed successfully passed it." When Ronga heard this, she couldn't help but be puzzled. She secretly asked the middle-aged woman what this sentence meant. The middle-aged woman replied, "What Granny means is that the white-robed young master's character is very determined. Once he has made up his mind, he will never turn back and will have no regrets. At the same time, this person is very loyal. He has his own opinions and principles. He will never mix up worldly affairs and feelings. He has his own bottom line and integrity. All in all, Ronga, you guessed right. That white-robed young master's character and temperament are absolutely first class." Ronga's eyes suddenly brightened, and a touch of expectation appeared in her eyes. "You mean that if that young master has made up his mind about a girl, he will be loyal and never betray her?" "Of course," the middle-aged woman said in a firm tone. At the same time, Ji Tianxing was standing in the sky, silently adjusting his breath. The tribulation of 7 emotions and 6 desires just now seemed gentle and peaceful, without any danger. But in fact, it was a very dangerous test. He was sealed by the 7-colored dazzling light, and his divine soul was immersed in the dreamland. He experienced many realistic and illusory scenes, and encountered too many dangers and difficult choices. This test was related to the 7 emotions and 6 desires. There were greed, anger, infatuation, and also love, hate, and affection. He was determined and was not afraid of any test at all. He resolved the test and destroyed the dreamland all the way. But the most torturous test was about love and affection. Women of all shapes and sizes, including several peerless beauties, all appeared in the realistic illusion. Some of them were people he knew, some he didn't know, and some he loved deeply. He passed the first few tests smoothly. The second last test was about Yun Yarrow, and he passed it with difficulty. The last test, the Dreamland test, was about Ji Ku. He suffered serious internal injuries. His internal organs were broken, and his divine soul was severely damaged. His consciousness was muddled. Fortunately, he found a way to survive in a hopeless situation. He destroyed the Dreamland and woke up. Then, he broke the seal of the 7-colored dazzling light and successfully escaped. Now that he had passed the 7 emotions and 6 desires tribulation, his mind and beliefs would be more determined. At the same time, this 7 emotions tribulation also allowed him to see his true self. He found the answer and was no longer confused. The tribulation cloud vortex high in the sky spun faster and began to change. The vortex, as black as ink, showed 2 colors, blazing white and red, intertwining and gathering. A terrifying hurricane blew between heaven and earth, and dense flames drifted in the air. In the canyon ruins within a few hundred miles, countless huge rocks were blown away by the strong wind and smashed into powder by the flames. Such a terrifying power made many onlookers tremble in fear. They hurriedly retreated further away. Not long after, the 8th bolt of lightning condensed in the tribulation cloud vortex. Boom! With a loud bang, the 9,000-foot-long bolt of lightning, which was covered in 5-colored brilliance, fell from the sky and struck Ji Tianxing. At first glance, there was nothing special about that bolt of lightning except for its shocking size. However, the heaven and earth within a 1,000-mile radius were suppressed by an invisible heavenly power. Everyone was afraid and couldn't help but kneel down and worship the heavens. How could an ordinary bolt of lightning bring with it such a terrifying suppressive power? Boom! With a loud bang, the 10,000-foot-tall 5-colored bolt of lightning struck Ji Tianxing and drowned his figure. Within a 500-mile radius, whether it was the ruins, the rocks, or the earth, were all smashed into powder. Chapter 1772. Yi was blasted dozens of miles away by the might of the heavenly thunder and smashed into a ruin. However, he was a 7th-level tribulation transcendence realm powerhouse. He could still withstand the might of the heavenly thunder and was not injured. The 5 bandits under him, on the other hand, were in a miserable state. They had been blasted dozens of miles away by the heavenly thunder. All of them were covered in wounds and blood. Their injuries and sorry state made it seem as if they were the ones who had undergone their own tribulation. After everyone got up from the ruins, they took pills and circulated their energy to heal their injuries while crazily cursing Ji Tianxing. Damn little bastard, he actually attracted such a terrifying heavenly thunder. I'm afraid that only a powerhouse like the second master can attract such a powerful heavenly thunder. Little bastard, he caused us to be so miserable. He's dead for sure. He'll definitely be struck into dregs by the heavenly thunder. Yes. He hasn't reached the tribulation transcendence realm yet, but he attracted such a terrifying heavenly thunder. He's definitely going to die. If he can survive this heavenly thunder, I'll twist my head off and kick it like a ball. Granny Jin, the middle-aged woman, and Ronga were also forced back 20 miles by the might of the heavenly thunder. However, Granny Jin's magic power was strong, and she had predicted the terrifying power of the heavenly thunder in advance. She had used a defensive secret technique. Therefore, the 3 of them were not injured, but their hearts were incomparably shocked and could not calm down for a long time. He actually attracted the 8th heavenly thunder, as expected of a genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. Such a genius has not appeared in our vast divine kingdom for thousands of years. The power of this heavenly thunder is so terrifying. It's even more terrifying than my 6th-level tribulation back then. I really don't know the name of that white-robed young master. If he succeeds today, he will definitely be famous and shock the entire Shenwu continent. The fate of Honorable Sword Martial Lord and Chen Yu was not much better than Yi and the others. Chen Yu was caught off guard and was covered in blood from the lightning and fire. He was smashed into the ruins in a sorry state. Honorable Sword Martial Lord was powerful and was not injured by the heavenly thunder. However, he was still in a sorry state. The 2 of them flew back into the sky and discussed with gloomy expressions. Their hearts were filled with resentment. As for Yun Yarrow, who was hiding in the reverse water sword, she was not affected at all. No matter how strong the heavenly lightning was, It couldn't hurt the reverse water divine sword, much less her. However, the power of the 8th heavenly thunder was beyond her imagination, which made her extremely worried. Tianxing's 8th heavenly thunder is dozens of times more powerful than the heavenly thunder I summoned. Could it be that the heavens are treating him differently and punishing him like this because he controls the power of lightning? Yun Yarrow murmured to herself as she stared at the sky above the ruins, hoping that Ji Tianxing would be able to resolve the situation safely. A moment later, the lightning and fire that filled the air dissipated, and Ji Tianxing's figure gradually appeared. He opened his arms and stood in the sky, surrounded by a ball of half-white and half-red lightning fire. He looked up at the sky with his eyes closed. His pale face was filled with pain. Golden, purple, and blue lightning kept drilling into his head, bombarding his sea of consciousness and divine soul. Blazing white wind also wrapped around his body, wantonly tearing at his skin and flesh. There were also mysterious crimson and light black flames that crazily drilled into his body from the soles of his feet, burning his meridians and bone marrow. Those mysterious flames even drilled into his chest and burned his internal organs. He was enduring a calamity and pain that no one could imagine, but he was sealed and unable to move. His white robe and inner shirt, as well as his long hair, were all burned to ashes by the lightning fire. Even though he was naked, he couldn't care less about shame. The extreme pain had already pushed him to the brink of collapse, and his divine soul was blurry. The skin all over his body was charred black, curling up and emitting spirals of black smoke. Astral winds and mysterious flames wrapped around his body, making it impossible for people to see his face and body. The surrounding experts all ignored the fact that he wasn't wearing any clothes, and all showed shocked expressions. Madame Jin's eyes were wide open, and light flashed in her pupils. She cried out involuntarily, "It's the great tribulation of wind and fire. Heavens, it's actually the great tribulation of wind and fire that only a 9th-level martial artist who becomes a martial saint will undergo." The middle-aged woman and Ronga were both stunned, and their faces were full of disbelief. They were so shocked that their bodies trembled. How can this be? Only a 9th-level martial artist who is about to become a martial saint will attract the great tribulation of wind and fire. How can that young master attract the great tribulation of wind and fire during his first tribulation? Why is the heavenly law so unfair? It's trying to kill him. The middle-aged woman's face was full of indignation and doubt. Her heart was also tightly clenched, and she sympathized with Ji Tianxing. Ronga's pretty face was also full of worry. She frowned and muttered, "The great tribulation of wind and fire is a test that a martial saint must undergo. The 9th heaven divine thunder attacks the divine soul, the astral winds from the outer heavens destroy the body, and the 9 yin secret flames burn the internal organs and blood marrow. This is the ultimate test of the heavenly tribulation. Since ancient times, countless experts had to experience the great tribulation of wind and fire. However, 95% of them were turned into ashes by the great tribulation of wind and fire. Only those who can successfully pass the great tribulation of wind and fire can transcend the mortal world and become a martial saint. I wonder if that young master can withstand it. If he passes the great tribulation of wind and fire, won't he become a martial saint immediately?" Hundreds of miles away, Yun Yarrow, who was hiding in the reverse water divine sword, stared at Ji Tianxing with reddened eyes, and a layer of mist covered her eyes. She was the closest to Ji Tianxing, so she could see him the clearest. The great tribulation of wind and fire was corroding Ji Tianxing's body, burning him black and smoking, and he almost didn't look human anymore. He was enduring unimaginable pain, and his consciousness was blurred. He could collapse and disintegrate at any time and turn into ashes. Yun Yarrow's mind was connected with his, so she could feel his pain. Of course, she was extremely worried. She secretly clenched her fists, and her fingers pierced her skin. Dark red blood flowed out of her palms, but she didn't feel any pain. After pondering for a while, she resolutely controlled the reverse water divine sword, passing through the rubble and flying towards Ji Tianxing. The heavens are so unfair. They actually sent the great tribulation of wind and fire to Tianxing. I can't just sit by and do nothing. If Tianxing can't pass this tribulation, then I will bear the pain with him and live and die with him. Yun Yarrow had already made up her mind. She wanted to borrow the power of the reverse water divine sword to help Ji Tianxing pass this tribulation. However, the reverse water divine sword had only flown a few miles away when Ji Tianxing's weak soul consciousness sound transmission entered Yun Yao's mind. Yao Yao, don't come over. I can withstand it. Ji Tianxing's voice was weak and low, and it was also a little hoarse and intermittent. Obviously, while he was enduring the great tribulation of wind and fire, he took out a little bit of strength with great difficulty to send a sound transmission to Yun Yao. Yun Yao's body immediately stiffened, and she controlled the reverse water divine sword to stop. She hated the heavens for being unfair, for making Ji Tianxing suffer such a painful test and torture. She really wanted to help Ji Tianxing resolve the great tribulation of wind and fire, and save him from this tribulation. However, she remembered Ji Tianxing's warning and understood the consequences of interfering with the heavenly tribulation. Chapter 1773. Just as Yun Yao was feeling anxious, struggling, and hesitating, Ji Tianxing, who was above the ruins, finally changed. Originally, he had been burned to charcoal by the great tribulation of wind and fire. He curled up like a shrimp, his whole body emitting black smoke. But now, his body was emitting a dense sacred white light. The dense brilliance overflowed from his mouth, nose, and eyes. It lit up from the wounds all over his body and quickly enveloped his entire body. This mysterious white light was softer and more sacred than the blazing white of the astral wind. It seemed to contain incredible power. The astral wind, heavenly lightning, and 9 yin secret fire were unable to get close to the mysterious white light and were quickly broken down and devoured. In just 100 breaths of time, the astral wind, secret fire, and heavenly lightning that enveloped Ji Tianxing all disappeared. He was wrapped in the dense sacred white light, quietly floating in the sky. His physical body was rapidly healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. His charred skin and flesh were quickly regenerating. The new flesh and skin were sparkling and translucent like jade, as pure as a baby, and revealed traces of sacred golden light. Even on his head, new black hair was quickly growing. It was jet black, shiny, and extremely flexible. After another quarter of an hour, he was wrapped in the mysterious white light, and his body was reborn. The great tribulation of wind and fire had finally been resolved. He regained his freedom of movement, slowly stretched his body, and gradually withdrew the sacred white light on the surface of his body. Only then did he realize that his perfect body was exposed to everyone without any concealment. He quickly took out a set of clothes from his interspatial ring and quickly changed them. In the blink of an eye, he returned to his former appearance, becoming a sacred and noble young master in fluttering white clothes. Not far away, Yun Yao saw him turn the situation around with her own eyes. She immediately smiled through her tears, wiped away the tears in her eyes, and revealed a gratified smile. In the sky further away, several groups of experts who were secretly watching were all dumbfounded on the spot. Yi and a few miserable bandits seemed to have been petrified. They were shocked and angry. Bright Sword Martial Lord and Chen Yu also looked at Ji Tianxing in a daze, their eyes filled with shock. After a long while, Chen Yu finally came back to his senses and muttered with a sour tone, "Damn brat, he actually turned the danger into safety and passed through the 8th heavenly lightning." However, how could his body be so perfect? Even a man's assets are so strong. It was clear that Ji Tianxing's body had been tempered thousands of times, and had already reached an extremely perfect state, making Chen Yu very jealous. Especially his majestic. It made Chen Yu feel even more ashamed of his inferiority, and a strong sense of inferiority arose in his heart. Chen Yu was well aware that if it were any other woman, they would be attracted to Ji Tianxing and not choose him. When the Honorable Sword Martial Lord heard Chen Yu's mutterings, a hint of anger flashed across his already gloomy old face. "Chen Yu, you are a martial artist. How can you have such filthy thoughts like a mortal? Our Yijian sect's inherited mental cultivation method can only be cultivated to the pinnacle by a virgin boy. If you want to reach the peak of martial arts, it's best to dispel those thoughts of the 7 emotions and 6 desires and wholeheartedly indulge in martial art." After being reprimanded, Chen Yu immediately lowered his head in dejection and no longer spoke. Granny Jin, Ronga, and the other 2 were too far away from Ji Tianxing. They could only vaguely see his body and did not see anything that was inappropriate to look at. But even so, Ronga's face still turned red and her heart skipped a beat. Ji Tianxing's perfect body only appeared for a short 2 breaths. Although she could only vaguely see his figure, she still admired it and ripples appeared in her heart. At this moment, the middle-aged woman's expression changed and she let out a cry of surprise. Look, that tribulation cloud vortex. It hasn't dissipated yet. Granny Jin and Ronga were both startled awake and immediately looked up at the sky. Sure enough, they saw that the tribulation cloud vortex was still there. Moreover, the tribulation cloud vortex was still slowly spinning, gradually turning blood red. Seeing this scene, Granny Jin was so excited that her body trembled and her entire old face twitched. The fact that the tribulation cloud hasn't dissipated means that there's still a 9th bolt of lightning. This white-robed young master can actually attract 9 bolts of lightning. According to historical records, in the tens of thousands of years since ancient times, only one person has attracted 9 bolts of lightning and successfully passed through them. Today, there's actually a second person who has attracted 9 bolts of lightning. It's really an honor for us to be able to witness it with our own eyes. The middle-aged woman was stunned and asked excitedly, Granny, the only person you're talking about who attracted 9 bolts of lightning, is it Kenshin from 1,000 years ago? Yes. Granny Jin nodded solemnly, her eyes filled with deep reverence. Kenshin was the most dazzling genius in the past 30,000 years. In the end, he ascended to the upper realm and even became the divine king who controlled the galaxy. Only a divine person like him, who shocked the past and present, could attract 9 bolts of lightning and cause the heavenly Tao to fear him. I didn't expect that in just a short 1,000 years, a second divine person would appear in the world. As she spoke, Granny Jin looked at Ji Tianxing with a solemn expression and whispered, Ji Yu, Rong watch carefully. You must remember the details of that young master's tribulation. Today, to be able to watch a divine person go through tribulation is the blessing of 3 lifetimes. If you can comprehend even a little bit from it, it'll be enough for you to enjoy for a lifetime. Ronga nodded repeatedly, her pretty face solemn, her eyes filled with anticipation and reverence. The middle-aged woman frowned and asked in a low voice, Granny, that white-robed young master is indeed a peerless genius, but your evaluation of him is so high, isn't it a little? Madame Jin turned her head and glanced at her. With a serious expression, she said, Ji Yu, do you know that Divine Lord Taihao, Martial God Tianju, and Martial God Luo Shui only attracted 8 heavenly tribulations? In tens of thousands of years, Kenshin, the only one who could attract 9 bolts of lightning, became the supreme divine king. Now, this young master is also going to attract 9 bolts of lightning. Do you think his future achievements will be better than the 3 martial gods? The middle-aged woman was speechless and couldn't refute. But she thought for a moment and continued, Granny, of course I know that young master is a peerless genius and will definitely reach the martial god realm in the future. But he's too young and hasn't stepped into the tribulation realm. It's hard to say whether he can go through the 9th bolt of lightning. Don't you think you're flattering him by calling him a saint and a divine person now? Granny Jin stared at the middle-aged woman and suddenly smiled. She asked, Ji Yu, you've cultivated for more than 900 years and are now at the 6th level of the tribulation realm, right? The middle-aged woman didn't understand and could only nod, yes. Chapter 1774. Granny Jin's words made the middle-aged woman's face filled with embarrassment. She instinctively did not believe these words and could not accept such an evaluation. However, Granny Jin had only passed the Great Tribulation of Wind and Fire 80 years ago and reached the martial sage realm. She had no way to question or refute the judgment of a martial sage expert. After a moment of silence, she sighed with a complicated expression and cupped her hands. Granny, Ji Yu understands. Granny Jin did not say anything else. She turned her head to look at Ji Tianxing in the distance and said leisurely, in this world, there are always a few geniuses who are as dazzling as the sun and moon, illuminating the past and present. Geniuses of that level are not something you and I can imagine. The middle-aged woman nodded silently. Ronga also nodded repeatedly. Her eyes looking at Ji Tianxing became even brighter. At the same time, the tribulation cloud vortex high in the sky finally turned blood red. Boom! Following the sound of thunder that resounded through the heavens and earth, a blood-red lightning bolt that was 10,000 feet long descended from the sky and struck towards Ji Tianxing. That blood-red lightning bolt was as mighty as a giant dragon, but it also revealed a mysterious and strange aura. In just an instant, the blood-red lightning bolt struck Ji Tianxing and enveloped his figure. There was no scene of the heavens collapsing and the earth cracking. The ruins were also safe and sound and were not struck by lightning. That 10,000 feet long blood-red lightning bolt had actually all poured into Ji Tianxing's body, causing his body to freeze in mid-air as if he had been petrified. He was like a stone statue, standing proudly and upright in the sky, not moving at all. Such a strange scene caused Yi, the bandits, Bright Sword Martial Lord, and Chen Yu to reveal looks of astonishment. How is this possible? That brat attracted the 9th bolt of lightning. Shouldn't it destroy the heavens and earth? It's too damn strange. When this bolt of lightning struck down, it didn't even break a rock. When the heavenly lightning struck down, that terrifying heavenly might was like the end of the world. I didn't expect it to be a bluff. The middle-aged woman and Ronga also revealed a look of deep doubt. They could not understand what was going on. However, with their previous experience, both of them had a premonition that there was definitely a big problem with the seemingly harmless heavenly lightning. Therefore, both of them turned to look at Madame Jin, hoping to get an answer. Madame Jin frowned and pondered for a moment. Then, she said, "This 9th thunderbolt is no ordinary thunderbolt. It should be the legendary Inner Demon Tribulation. The so-called Inner Demon Tribulation is the heavenly Tao's final test for unparalleled geniuses." The middle-aged woman and Ronga listened carefully to Granny Jin's explanation. They felt that it was incredible and eye-opening. At the same time, 50 miles away from Ji Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, who was hiding in the reverse water divine sword, was also full of worry. She stared at Ji Tianxing and thought to herself, "I only triggered 8 bolts of heavenly thunder, but Tianxing managed to trigger 9 bolts of heavenly thunder, just like Kenshin back then. Now, he is also facing the Inner Demon Tribulation. I wonder if his Inner Demon Tribulation is the same as mine. Back then, I saw the demon race in the Inner Demon Tribulation and obtained many of Goddess Yarrow Guang's memories. Tianxing's Inner Demon Tribulation definitely can't avoid the demon race and Kenshin, right?" Thinking of this, she secretly prayed in her heart, hoping that Ji Tianxing could pass it smoothly. Ji Tianxing's physical body was wrapped in a ball of bloody light, suspended motionlessly in the sky. And his soul had already fallen into the Inner Demon Tribulation. In the depths of his soul, a very realistic scene emerged, sinking him into it and unable to extricate himself. On a grayish-brown wasteland, the flames of war were burning, and smoke signals were drifting into the sky. The endless demon race army formed a boundless black sea. Under the leadership of numerous giant demons, they were bravely charging forward. Many human soldiers, as well as the armies and martial artists of various races, were resisting the demon race army's rampage with hearts full of indignation and fear. The entire wasteland was covered in blood and fire. Heaven and earth were filled with shouts, screams, and the rumbling sounds of magic spells colliding. The soldiers and martial artists of various races were constantly killed by the ferocious demon race, falling into pools of blood in pieces. Soldiers and martial artists fell down one after another, like wheat being cut down. On this wasteland battlefield, life was inferior to even grass, lowly to the extreme. Before long, the demon race army defeated the soldiers of various races. Like a black tide, they surged to the end of the wasteland, drowning that majestic city. In the ancient city, millions of people were brutally slaughtered, without any strength to resist. Flames of war rose in the city, blood flowed like rivers, and bones were strewn all over the ground. It was like purgatory on earth. Ji Tianxing was dressed in a white robe dyed red with blood. Holding the pitch-black and ice-cold burial of heaven, he was standing high in the sky covered with grey clouds, fighting with several giant demons. The bodies of those giant demons were as majestic as mountains. With a raise of their hands, they could release magic spells that could destroy heaven and earth. Ji Tianxing was bathed in blood, fighting fiercely. The golden wings on his back had already dimmed. His face was covered in blood, his magic power was empty, and he could barely hold on. Deep grief and helplessness filled his heart, causing him to roar at the sky. The few trolls laughed hideously and cursed in a mocking manner. Ji Tianxing. How can a little bastard like you stop the advance of my race? A mantis trying to stop a chariot. You overestimate yourself. Little worm, kneel down and beg for surrender now. Perhaps the ancestor will give you a dignified death. Anger made Ji Tianxing crazy. He waved his divine sword recklessly, attacking those giant demons. However, the giant demons waved their huge copper hammers, long sabers, and other weapons, sending him flying back in 2 or 3 moves. His right arm was chopped off, and he fell into the ruins, covered in blood, on the verge of death. However, he was still unyielding. Holding the sword of burial of heaven in his left hand, he stood up shakily. At this moment, those giant demons surrounded him, but they were not in a hurry to attack. A series of earth-shattering noises gradually came from afar. The giant demons looked at the wasteland, waiting in awe. Ji Tianxing also looked up at the wasteland. He saw a majestic figure that was 3,000 feet tall striding over. That pitch-black figure stood tall, as if it was a god from the antiquity age. Its entire body was shrouded in purple demonic light, and its body was extremely sturdy. It also had 6 scarlet eyes, 6 thick arms, and 8 broad wings. Ji Tianxing recognized it at a glance. It was the ancestor fiend celestial. Bam! 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 As the ancestor fiend celestial's heavy footsteps sounded, the entire wasteland trembled. After a while, it stopped in front of Ji Tianxing. 6 huge scarlet eyes stared down at Ji Tianxing from above. After sizing him up for a while, the ancestor fiend celestial sneered and said in a mocking tone, "Kenshin, you really disappoint me. The 3 martial gods are no different from ants in my eyes. I originally thought that you, who once controlled the galaxy and ruled thousands of gods, as the divine king of the 9 heavens, would be able to exchange a few moves with me." Chapter 1775. The ancestor fiend celestial looked down at Ji Tianxing. His expression and tone were full of contempt. Ji Tianxing's heart was burning with rage, surging with violent killing intent. However, his strength was weak, and one of his arms had been chopped off. He was already at the end of his rope. He looked up angrily at the ancestor fiend celestial. While emitting killing intent, he was also puzzled. He actually called me Kenshin? How can this be? He is an ancient fiend celestial from 30,000 years ago, while Kenshin is an unparalleled expert from 1,000 years ago. The two of them have no connection at all. Just as he was feeling puzzled, the ancestor fiend celestial slowly raised his left palm, releasing a few pitch-black cold light blades, which stabbed down from the sky. Swish, swish, swish. Ji Tianxing wanted to dodge, but he could not. He was stabbed by the light blades, and fell to the ground with blood spurting out from his body. A few bloody holes appeared on his chest, back, and legs, and the bones inside could be clearly seen. A heart-wrenching pain spread throughout his body, causing him to convulse and curl up. Cake. The ancestor fiend celestial laughed sinisterly, and said in a disdainful tone, "Indeed, a piece of trash that can't even withstand a single blow. What a disappointment. I don't understand. Just based on your abilities, how can you protect this continent and its billions of people?" As he said that, the ancestor fiend celestial moved his finger again, and a bloodlight covered the sky. The dark red bloodlight condensed into light blades, and like a rain of arrows, they rained down and enveloped Ji Tianxing. Swish, swish, swish. The bloodlight flashed, and the sky collapsed. Ji Tianxing was also pierced into a sieve by the bloodlight blades, and his body was covered with hideous wounds and bloody holes, with blood gushing out like a fountain. Furthermore, his body had been chopped into 2, and mixed with the blood mud, looking extremely miserable. After suffering such heavy injuries, Ji Tianxing was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. His soul was also in pain, and his consciousness was blurry. Once his consciousness fainted, he would fall into a deep sleep, and might never wake up again. He tried his best to hold on, and roared in his heart, "No, I can't die, no matter what, I can't fall. Even if I die, I will drag the ancestral devil god down with me." Relying on his strong willpower, he managed to hold on and didn't faint on the spot. The 2 halves of his body wriggled gently and slowly gathered together. He wanted to reconstruct his body. Seeing how tenacious his life force was, the ancestor devil god couldn't help but grin. Ha ha ha. Ants will always be ants. No matter how humiliating and painful it is, it still has to drag out an ignoble existence. However, I will not give you a chance. Accept your destruction in despair. The ancestral demon god sneered as he raised his left foot that was as large as a mountain and stomped down. The pitch-black giant foot descended from the sky like a huge mountain. It was about to trample Ji Tianxing into powder. At the moment of life and death, Ji Tianxing tried his best to look up at the sky and roared unyieldingly, "No. This can't be true. I will never lose to you." Even though the illusion was so real that it was hard to tell if it was real or fake. However, he suddenly realized that this was definitely not true. The ancestral demon god had already recovered to become a god, but he still had the strength of a tribulation transcendence realm cultivator. This was impossible. The difference in strength between the two of them couldn't be so great. It just called me Kenshin. Yes, I am not Ji Tianxing. I am Kenshin, the divine king that ascends to the 9 heavens and rules over 10,000 god. Ji Tianxing let out a furious roar. Every drop of blood, every pore, and every hair in his body began to burn. The two halves of his body ignited with golden flames and quickly fused into a ball. In the next moment, the golden sacred flames condensed and formed into an 8 feet tall, holy and dignified man in a white robe. The ancestral demon god's giant foot also stomped down on him, causing an earth-shattering explosion. Boom! Following the deafening explosion, Ji Tianxing's figure was drowned out. The ground within a radius of 100 miles was crushed by the gigantic foot, and a gigantic abyss appeared. However, after the ancestral demon god moved his foot away, he looked at the ground in astonishment. A young man in a white robe was holding a pitch-black divine sword and standing majestically above the abyss. This person was tall and had a handsome and resolute face. His eyes were as bright as the stars. His long hair was tied up with a green hairband and a silver belt was tied around his waist. He wore a pair of simple black cloth shoes. At first glance, he looked very plain. However, he exuded a holy and dignified aura that could not be blasphemed. He was also surrounded by formless divine power. He was Kenshin. The ancestral demon god looked at Kenshin before lowering his head to look at the back of his foot. He saw that there was a huge bloody hole in his foot. The pitch-black demonic blood was gushing out like a fountain and spilling into the abyss. The ancestral demon god was instantly enraged. He raised his fists and punched out with a monstrous black light towards Kenshin. "You reptile, go to hell." Kenshin looked at the ancestral demon god indifferently. His left hand was behind his back and his right hand was holding the sword of burial of heaven as he slashed out 3 heaven-splitting swords. Bam bam bam! The 3 heaven-splitting swords with resplendent golden light slashed at the ancestral demon god. He was sent flying backwards. His left ankle was severed and there was a huge bloody hole in his right leg and chest. After flying for 100 miles, it finally smashed into the wasteland with a loud boom, shattering the ground into pieces. Before he could get up, Kenshin had already teleported 100 miles away and chased after him with his sword. "Evil demons, everyone has the right to kill you," Kenshin shouted emotionlessly as he swung his sword at the ancestral demon god. White Tiger Sacred Sword. The huge sword cut through the sky and brought along an illusory white tiger shadow, instantly engulfing the ancestral demon god. Bam! The ancestral demon god's right leg was severed again. Countless wounds appeared all over his body as dark purple demonic blood spurted out. The sudden reversal of the battle situation and the heart-wrenching pain made the ancestral demon god furious. He roared at the top of his lungs. "Ah ah ah! You despicable worm, you ant-like thing, how dare you bully this god? This god will fight it out with you." As he roared, the ancestral demon god launched a counterattack. Bloodlight and black fog covered the sky and covered a radius of 1,000 miles. Kenshin was fearless. He used the Big Dipper constellation steps and held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand. He used a superb sword technique that had reached perfection. No matter how much bloodlight and demonic aura approached him, they were blocked by the sword light and could not get close. The two of them fought in the sky above the wilderness for a full 15 minutes before the battle came to an end. The sky within a radius of 1,000 miles had been shattered and densely packed cracks appeared in the void. The wilderness had turned into ruins and was filled with ravines and holes. Kenshin was still in his snow-white robe and was not injured at all. As for the ancestral demon god, 5 of his arms and wings had been severed. His legs had been blasted into smithereens. Chapter 1776. After the ancestor demon god was defeated and fled, the millions of demon race troops also retreated like the tide. Kenshin stood quietly in the sky and closed his eyes, revealing a look of pain. The power in his body quickly dissipated, and a strong sense of weakness and exhaustion attacked him, causing him to immediately fall into a coma. Swoosh! In a daze, Ji Tianxing's consciousness gradually returned to him. Although his body and consciousness were still very tired, he slowly opened his eyes and saw the scene in front of him clearly. He was surrounded by boundless darkness, and there was only a path shining with stars under his feet. Upon closer inspection, the straight and wide path was surprisingly formed by the convergence of thousands of stars, like a silver-white waterfall. Ji Tianxing looked around and discovered that there was nothing in the dark void other than the path of stars. He immediately understood that he was still in the dream realm, and the mental demon tribulation had not ended. He followed the path of stars under his feet and walked forward, into the depths of the void. Time in the void seemed to pass extremely slowly, and the scenery around him never changed. He did not know how long he had been walking for, until he saw a towering platform at the end of the path of stars. Therefore, he quickened his pace and rushed over, curiously sizing up the platform. The huge platform seemed to be formed by stars, and it was gold and silver in color, containing a majestic divine aura. The path of stars was connected to the platform, and there were a total of 9,999 steps on the platform, which was a total of 10,000 feet high. Ji Tianxing came closer, and after observing for a while, he stepped onto the steps. He clearly saw that every step was engraved with dense seal characters, recording a vast amount of complicated information. There was the truth of martial arts, as well as the world of one's home country, as well as the wind and clouds of heaven and earth, as well as the vast and boundless sea of stars. However, he could not understand most of the content, as it was too profound and bizarre. Moreover, his attention was not on his feet. He could vaguely see that at the top of the platform, there was a white figure standing tall. Not long after, he stepped on nearly 10,000 steps and finally arrived at the top of the platform. In front of him was a platform with a radius of 300 meters. The ground was as bright as jade, and it was suffused with the brilliance of the stars. An 8-foot-tall figure in a white robe was standing quietly on the high platform. With his hands behind his back and his back facing Ji Tianxing, he stared into the vast void as if he was thinking about something. Ji Tianxing was no stranger to this unique figure. Kenshin. He raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but call out. The white-robed figure was awakened. He ended his contemplation and slowly turned around. His face was handsome and resolute, and his eyes were as deep and vast as the starry sky. He wore a green hairband on his head, a silver jade belt around his waist, and a pair of black cloth shoes on his feet. It was undoubtedly Kenshin. He looked at Ji Tianxing calmly and said in a leisurely tone, "I have waited for 1,000 years. You have finally come." Ji Tianxing frowned and looked at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" Kenshin didn't explain. He looked at him deeply and said in a gratified tone, "In a short 25 years, you were able to attract the heavenly tribulation. It seems that my painstaking efforts were not in vain. With such an unprecedented growth speed, you will definitely shock the universe and make all the gods bow down to you." Kenshin muttered to himself and said in a regretful tone, "It's a pity that my memories haven't been fully awakened, and my potential hasn't been fully stimulated. I am still ignorant to this day." Ji Tianxing was even more confused when he heard Kenshin's words. He couldn't help but ask, "Senior Kenshin, could it be that you arranged for me to receive your inheritance 1,000 years ago? What is the relationship between you and me?" The sword god was startled by his question, and then an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry appeared on his face. "Sigh, I'm really crying because of you, because of my own stupidity. Now that things have come to this, Don't you have an answer in your heart? Many images of Kenshin appeared in Ji Tianqing's memories. And now, this was the first time he saw Kenshin smile. Of course, Kenshin's words shocked him even more. You mean, I am you? Ji Tianqing's pupils constricted and he stared at Kenshin. His heart was in his throat. Kenshin frowned slightly. After thinking for a while, he shook his head. Your words are both correct and incorrect. I am only me, and I am also the current you. But you are not only you. These two sentences were so specious that it was hard to fathom them. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while before he came to a realization. I understand now. You are Kenshin, and you reincarnated into me. And I am not only Kenshin, but also Ji Tianqing. Kenshin revealed a gratified expression and nodded slightly. That's right, that's exactly the case. I am Kenshin, and I only have Kenshin's memories. And you are not only me, but also the number one prodigy Ji Tianqing. You are even more monstrous than me. After receiving Kenshin's confirmation, Ji Tianqing finally unlocked the shackles in his heart and pushed aside the layers of fog. He looked at Kenshin with a burning gaze and asked impatiently, You have already fallen for 1,000 years. How can you talk to me across space? Kenshin knew that he was full of doubts and explained, As the king of gods, not only is I powerful, but I also have the ability to change the heavens and change the earth. Before I fell, I had already prepared the corresponding plan and was only waiting for my rebirth 1,000 years later. I did something to the heavenly tribulation lightning. You will only understand all of this when you undergo the tribulation. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and praised in disbelief, as expected of the king of gods, you can actually do something to the heavenly tribulation. Kenshin said with a calm expression, praising yourself like this doesn't seem too modest. Ji Tianqing smiled and continued to ask, I want to know, since you have already become the king of gods, why did you fall? And why did you fall? Kenshin's eyes dimmed, and he said in a low voice, The path of martial arts and the path of godhood are endless. There is always a higher mountain. As for the mystery of my fall, it is still too early for you to investigate it. When you ascend to the upper realm and become strong enough, you will naturally find the answer. Ji Tianqing nodded and asked again, Then what secrets are hidden in the tombs of yin and yang that you left behind? A secret that can make the entire world go crazy, Kenshin answered. Ji Tianqing asked again, In Kenshin's tomb, I found a super formation that seemed to have been passed down from ancient times. What kind of formation is that? Kenshin said in a serious tone, The god-slaying sword formation, a relic from the desolate era. I have studied it for many years and still have not been able to fully understand it. Ji Tianqing had countless questions in his heart and wanted to ask Kenshin more. However, Kenshin raised his hand to stop him and said in a serious tone, Whether it is martial arts or recovering your past memories, you have to do it step by step. You cannot be impatient, otherwise, there will be a great disaster. I do not have much time left. I will help you awaken a part of your memories first. Chapter 1777. Swoosh. The white light entered Ji Tianqing's forehead and quickly integrated into his sea of consciousness. Vast and mighty information poured into his divine soul like a surging tide. He was dizzy from the impact, and his consciousness was a little blurred. He could only sit cross-legged on the high platform and refine the memories. Kenshin looked at him faintly and murmured in a low and sonorous voice, 100 tribulations, 1,000 tribulations, since ancient times, I will defy the heaven. After 100 years, I will definitely make a comeback and reach the peak again. As his voice fell, his body also turned into a ray of mysterious white light and entered Ji Tianqing's body, and soon merged with it. The surrounding void returned to darkness and calmness, and the stars on the high platform were still shining. Ji Tianqing was unaware of all this. He was immersed in his sea of consciousness and focused on refining Kenshin's memories. In the sea of fire in the flaming mountain. Half a day had passed, and the tribulation cloud vortex above the ruins had not dissipated yet. Ji Tianqing, dressed in a white robe, was still wrapped in the bloody light and quietly suspended in the sky. Dozens of miles away, Yun Yarrow was hiding in the reverse water divine sword. She was already a little anxious from waiting. She looked at Ji Tianqing with worried eyes and murmured secretly, half a day has passed. Why hasn't Ji Tianxing succeeded in passing the tribulation? Could it be that he has encountered some trouble? There are already several groups of powerhouses watching. If the tribulation doesn't end, I'm afraid there will be unexpected problems. On the other side, in the sky hundreds of miles away from Ji Tianxing, Grandma Jin, the middle-aged woman, and Ronga were also waiting anxiously, showing a puzzled look. Ronga asked Grandma Jin worriedly, "Grandma, that young master's inner demon tribulation has been going on for half a day. Will he be okay?" Grandma Jin clenched her golden walking stick and said with a solemn face, "Grandma has not passed the inner demon tribulation. How can you know the mystery? However, a inner demon tribulation lasting for half a day is really unusual. I'm afraid that young master is in trouble." Hearing her words, Ronga's eyes became more and more worried, and her mood became heavier. The middle-aged woman hurriedly comforted her, "Rong, don't worry. That young master is comparable to the Kenshin. He will definitely be able to turn misfortune into blessing." "I hope so." Ronga nodded and prayed silently. Night Crow and the bandits were hiding in the sea of fire in the southwest corner of the ruins. Everyone stared at Ji Tianxing, who was standing on top of the ruins. They were already filled with anxiety and impatience. The bandits urged Night Crow telepathically like ants on a hot pan. "Second Master, that brat hasn't moved for a long time. Are we still going to wait here?" "That's right, Second Master. Our brothers have all suffered heavy injuries. We just want to get rid of that brat as soon as possible and find a place to heal. The longer we stay in the sea of fire, the more our magic power will be consumed, and our injuries will worsen. If that kid drags on for another half a day, we won't have much of our strength left. Second Master, you have to make a decision quickly. Wasting time like this is not the way to go. How could Yi not be anxious and worried?" But in order to be cautious, he had endured until now. After being urged by the bandits, he gradually lost his patience. "The First Master sent me a message earlier. They have already found the hiding place of the glazed fire dragon. Many powerhouses have surrounded the lair of the glazed fire dragon. I'm afraid they will take action soon. The First Master urged us to rush over to help as soon as possible. We can't delay our work," Night Crow said in a low voice. With a dignified expression, he ordered, "Now that things have come to this, we really can't wait any longer. That brat is going through the tribulation. He can't even protect himself and has no power to resist. You guys go now and kill him as fast as you can. If he succeeds, he will become the #1 genius of the continent. It will be difficult for us to get rid of him then." Hearing this order, the 5 bandits were stunned. They looked at each other, but no one dared to agree. "Second Master, are we going to rush over and kill him just like that? If we do it now, we will definitely enter the range of the tribulation. Even if we can kill that brat, we will be killed by the tribulation. Outsiders can't interfere with the tribulation. Otherwise, they will be punished by the heavens. This is the consensus of the martial arts world." Seeing that the bandits were full of hesitation and didn't dare to take action, Night Crow suddenly became angry. "Bastard! You dare to disobey my order? Outsiders can't interfere with the tribulation. It means that they can't help the person going through the tribulation resist the heavenly thunder. You are going to kill that brat, not help him go through the tribulation. How can you be punished by the heavens? Since I sent you to do it, I will definitely not let you die." After hearing Night Crow's explanation, the bandits' doubts were dispelled a little. After a while, the 5 bandits used the secret method of invisibility and quietly attacked Ji Tianxing. Their movements were quite hidden. They scattered and approached from different directions. The tribulation cloud vortex in the sky had been rotating calmly at a uniform speed. There was no strange phenomenon at all. This made them feel relieved. They no longer had any worries. When they were only tens of thousands of feet away from Ji Tianxing, they waved their weapons and used their most powerful killing moves to attack Ji Tianxing. Clear Wind Moon Slashing Blade. 10 Floating Cloud Imperial Sword. Golden Dragon Breaking Dawn. 10,000 swords facing the sky. With a few angry shouts, dazzling saber lights and sword shadows appeared in the sky, blotting out the sky and the sun. In an instant, Hundreds of magic lights and shadows drowned Ji Tianxing's figure. And he was still wrapped in the bloody light, floating motionlessly in the sky, unaware of all this. Of course, even if he sensed the danger, it was useless. He was sealed by the dark red bloody light and couldn't move at all. Dozens of miles away, Yun Yaro suddenly saw several bandits attacking Ji Tianxing. Her face suddenly changed, and her eyes surged with murderous intent. No! She shouted with grief and indignation. She no longer cared to hide and rushed out with the reverse water divine sword. Although she couldn't save Ji Tianxing in time, she couldn't do anything. She swore to protect Ji Tianxing even if she had to die. In the distance, Madame Jin, Rong and the other two suddenly saw a few bandits appear, and their expressions changed drastically. The three of them were filled with worry and indignation, and they hated those bandits incomparably. However, they were too far away. Even if they wanted to save Ji Tianxing, it was impossible. On the other hand, Bright Sword Martial Lord and Chen Yu had always been depressed. Suddenly seeing this scene, the two of them were surprised, but at the same time, they also felt a sense of schadenfreude. Here he, as expected, a tall tree attracts the wind. That kid is too heaven-defying. He finally provoked an enemy. What a pity. A peerless genius who can trigger 9 bolts of heavenly lightning is going to fall like this. The two of them secretly laughed, thinking that Ji Tianxing was definitely going to die. But at this moment, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky suddenly changed. The tribulation cloud that was originally rotating at a uniform speed suddenly lit up with a dazzling golden light, condensing into a few bolts of lightning that could split heaven and earth. Boom! Chapter 1778. The resplendent golden heavenly lightning struck down fiercely with the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. The number of heavenly lightning was neither more nor less. There were exactly 5 bolts, and they struck the 5 bandits respectively. This scene caused Yi Ya, who was observing the situation from afar, to change his expression in shock. Granny Jin, Ronga, and the other two were filled with joy, revealing expressions of relief. As for Bright Sword Martial Lord and Chen Yu, their faces were filled with astonishment, completely unable to understand. The 5 bandits sensed that something was wrong, and their faces immediately turned ashen. They were terrified and desperate to the extreme. They were all scared out of their wits and immediately wanted to turn around and run away. Unfortunately, the brilliant heavenly might enveloped them, suppressing them like a towering mountain, making it difficult for them to move an inch and unable to dodge at all. Kaboom! Following a few earth-shattering thunderclaps, 5 golden heavenly lightning bolts exploded with a loud bang. The dazzling golden light enveloped the sky for 100 miles. An endless amount of gravel and dust rose up like a mushroom cloud, spreading in all directions. The pitilessly terrifying impact naturally affected Yun Yao. She had just arrived nearby when she was sent flying by the violent shockwave. Fortunately, she had been staying in the water reverse divine sword, and the heavenly lightning could not do anything to the divine sword. The 5 bandits' fates were extremely miserable. They were blasted into pieces by the heavenly lightning on the spot, and their bodies turned into dust. 2 of them were relatively lucky. Only their bodies were destroyed, and their souls were severely injured, but they tenaciously survived. The other 3 were more unlucky. Not only were their bodies destroyed, but their souls were also destroyed on the spot, and they were completely dead. These 3 bandits had transcended their own heavenly tribulation, but they died under someone else's heavenly tribulation. This kind of death was truly very novel. When the smoke, dust, and lightning dissipated, the 2 heavily injured souls fled into the distance in panic. Even if they disobeyed Yi Ya's orders and were sentenced to death by Yi Ya, they couldn't care less. However, things didn't go as they wished. They fled in fear, but they neglected one thing. Ji Tianxing had companions. Whoosh! An icy blue sword light suddenly shot out from the sea of fire and instantly pierced a ball of divine soul. Boom! With a dull explosion, the soul exploded on the spot and was shattered by the water reverse divine sword. This person had the strength of the 5th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, but he was seriously injured and his strength was extremely weak. How could this person survive being hit by the water reverse divine sword when he was caught off guard? When the other soul saw its companion being killed, It was scared out of its wits and desperately accelerated to escape. But it was futile. Since Yoon Yaro's killing intent had already been aroused, there was no way she would leave anyone alive. Whoosh! She then controlled the reverse water divine sword and instantly traversed 10 miles in the sky, killing her way to the back of the divine soul. The reverse water sword emitted a sky full of cold light. It condensed into a giant sword that was hundreds of meters long. Carrying with it unparalleled prowess, it violently slashed down. Another muffled explosion rang out, and the severely injured divine soul was also shattered by the sword light, disintegrating into wisps of chi that scattered into the sea of fire. 3 bandits were killed by the heavenly tribulation, and 2 by Yoon Yaro's divine sword. Yi, who was in the distance, rushed over to rescue them after realizing that something was wrong. But he was too far away. Even if he teleported continuously, he couldn't stop Yoon Yaro. Damn it! That damned woman has been hiding nearby all this time. Yi witnessed the death of his 5 subordinates with his own eyes. The anger in his heart was almost off the charts. He recognized the water reverse divine sword and knew that it was Yoon Yaro's magic treasure. He hated Yoon Yaro to the core. Despicable B***tch. In that case, I'll kill you first and then deal with that brat. Yi immediately had this thought when he saw the water reverse divine sword flying across the sky. Ji Tianxing was in the middle of his tribulation and had no time to care about other things. Although Yoon Yaro had the divine sword, she was alone after all and only had the strength of the first level of the tribulation transcendence realm. Therefore, Yi decided to kill Yoon Yaro first. After snatching the divine sword, he would kill Ji Tianxing. With a flash of brilliance in his palm, a black feather fan appeared. With a shake of his black robe, he rushed toward the water reverse divine sword as fast as a stream of light. He waved the black feather fan and shot out a black light that blotted out the sky. Black wings split the sky. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Thousands of pitch-black and cold light blades flew out of the black feather fan. They combined in pairs and rushed toward the water reverse divine sword like pairs of black light wings. The black light cut through the sky and suppressed the heavenly fire in the sky. In the blink of an eye, the black light that filled the sky surrounded the water reverse divine sword and sealed the open space within a radius of 10,000 feet. Hundreds of black light wings spun crazily, desperately trying to kill the water reverse divine sword. The blade-like black wings wantonly collided and cut the water reverse divine sword, producing crisp ding-ding-dang-dang-dang sounds that lingered in the ears. However, the water reverse divine sword was a divine weapon. It was indestructible and invincible. Even if it was strangled by hundreds of black wings, the divine sword was unscathed. Even the layer of icy blue light on the surface was not defeated. On the contrary, those black light wings were constantly shattered by the divine sword. However, these black wings were very strange and changeable. Even if they were shattered into pieces, the black wings could quickly split and recombine to form more and sharper light blades. In just 100 breaths of time, the hundreds of black wings were all shattered and turned into tens of thousands of black light blades. So many black light blades formed a light shield that covered an area of 10 miles. It was like a ceiling formation that suppressed the water reverse divine sword. Although the water reverse divine sword was very powerful, Yoon Yaro's strength was 6 realms lower than Yi. She controlled the water reverse divine sword and used all her strength to break out of the encirclement, but she still could not escape. After the light shield formed by the black light blades was shattered and pierced, Yi could always repair it immediately. The water reverse divine sword was so indestructible that it made him even more certain that this was a treasure sword above the divine grade. He became more and more excited and swore to snatch the treasure sword. After attacking for a long time without success, he used a divine soul secret technique. He used the black light blades to release divine soul power and crazily attacked Yoon Yaro. Yoon Yaro hid in the water reverse divine sword. Her divine soul was also affected and could not use her full strength. Her counterattack became weaker and weaker, and her situation became more and more dangerous. In the distance, Grandma Jin and the other 2, Bright Sword Martial Lord, and Chen Yu all saw this scene. Everyone secretly stared at Yi and the water reverse divine sword, not understanding what was going on. Unknowingly, another quarter of an hour passed. Yoon Yaro's divine soul suffered a heavy blow. Her consciousness became more and more blurry, and her counterattack became weaker and weaker. With just the water reverse divine sword, she was no longer able to resist Yi Ya's various strange methods. Not long after, when her divine soul fell into a coma, she was about to be captured by Yi Ya and be at his mercy. But at this time, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky gradually began to dissipate. The dark red blood light that wrapped around Ji Tianxing also cracked into pieces and quickly dissipated in the sky. Ji Tianxing, who was motionless like a stone statue, finally regained consciousness and slowly opened his eyes. Without a doubt, his heavenly tribulation had ended. The moment he opened his eyes, his entire body burst out with a majestic domineering aura that suppressed the heavens and earth. 2 rays of golden light shot out from his eyes that were as bright as stars. Chapter 1779. When the tribulation clouds dissipated, they turned into a divine golden light that covered the sky and earth, pouring into Ji Tianxing's body. His body swelled violently, and he immediately turned into a 10-foot-tall giant, covered in golden light. His white robe was like snow, his long hair fluttered, his arms hung by his side, and his body burst out with a domineering aura. He walked out of the divine golden light, with the sky above his head and the earth beneath his feet, as if he controlled the heavens and earth. In his deep and cold eyes, purple, blue, and golden lightning flashed, changing between life and death, containing supreme divine power. At this moment, although he was not a god, he surpassed all the gods in the world. His body stood proudly between heaven and earth, looking up at the sky, his face was cold, and his eyes were indifferent as he murmured, "The heavens can't cover my eyes. This earth can't bury my heart. The gods and demons of the heavens will also vanish." As his voice fell, the divine golden light that enveloped his body quickly converged. The golden light was the reward given by the heavenly Tao after he successfully transcended the tribulation. His injuries had been healed, and his strength had reached its peak and limit. His entire person had been reborn and reached a new realm. Dozens of miles away, Yi Ya was controlling tens of thousands of black light blades, crazily attacking the reverse water sword and Yoon Yao. Suddenly seeing Ji Tianxing wake up and feeling Ji Tianxing's powerful aura, his face immediately changed, and his eyes revealed a strong sense of fear. Damn it! That kid really succeeded in transcending the heavenly tribulation. His strength. His aura. How can it be so powerful? Yi Ya couldn't believe that Ji Tianxing had just stepped into the first layer of the tribulation realm, and his strength and aura were actually on par with him. This was simply a miracle. In the sky further away, the Honorable Sword Martial Lord and Chen Yu stared at Ji Tianxing, their eyes extremely complicated. Shock, disbelief, and strong jealousy filled the hearts of the two. Granny Jin, Ji Yu, and Rong revealed a look of surprise and relief. Especially Granny Jin and Rong, they both breathed a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Just as Madame Jin had said, it was their honor and fortune to be able to witness a peerless genius transcend the 9th heaven tribulation with their own eyes. They would never be able to see another monstrous genius like Ji Tianxing in their lifetime. At that moment, Ji Yu's eyes suddenly widened, revealing a look of anticipation. "Look, that gentleman is making his move." Madame Jin and Rong quickly looked over and saw a scene that they would never forget. Ji Tianxing stepped into the sky, holding the 80-foot-long burial of heaven's sword in his hand. His robe fluttered in the wind as he charged towards Yi Ya. Shua. With a flash of white light, he teleported 40 miles away and appeared behind Yi Ya. Then, with his left hand behind his back and his right hand holding the sword of burial of heaven, he slashed out fiercely. Boom! Suddenly, the pitch-black, ice-cold sword burst forth with 3-colored lightning, condensing into 3 giant swords that slashed towards Yi Ya. The golden, purple, and blue heavenly lightning that had appeared in the heavenly tribulation before actually appeared again and was used in his sword technique. Yi Ya had already sensed that something was wrong, so he retreated in advance and narrowly avoided the lightning attack. However, the cage formed by tens of thousands of black light blades was hit by the 3 giant lightning swords, and a series of muffled loud noises burst out. Bang! 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 In the deafening loud noise, the black light cage was torn apart, bursting into pieces and scattering on the ground. The secret technique that Yi Ya had painstakingly used was destroyed by Ji Tianxing just like that. He stood in the distant sky with a horrified expression and thought to himself with lingering fear, "Damn little bastard, you can actually control heavenly lightning?" Fortunately, I dodged in time, or else I would be in trouble. Whoosh! At that moment, an icy blue brilliance flew out from the black light fragments and stopped beside Ji Tianxing. With a flash of icy blue light, Yun Yaro appeared in front of Ji Tianxing and looked at him with concern. "Tianxing, you finally passed the heavenly tribulation successfully. Are you hurt anywhere?" Yun Yaro looked at Ji Tianxing and asked with concern. Ji Tianxing looked at her gently and shook his head. "I'm not hurt, and my strength has returned to its peak. You don't have to worry." Yun Yaro was relieved, and all the worry and anxiety in her heart dissipated. She looked at Ji Tianxing with burning eyes and said hesitantly, "Tianxing, you have also reached the first tier of the crossing calamity realm. You seem to have been reborn. I feel like you have become a different person, especially your aura. Is it related to the awakening of your soul memory?" Yun Yaro could certainly guess that Ji Tianxing had become so sacred, dignified, and cold. It must be related to Kenshin. Ji Tianxing did not deny it and nodded. "Yes." After getting a positive answer, Yun Yaro showed a gratified look and felt much more relaxed. At this moment, Yi Ya took the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. He waved his black feather fan and shot out an overwhelming black light. Claw of Annihilation. The endless black light quickly condensed into a giant claw with a radius of 10,000 feet. The giant claw was black and cold, emitting a terrifying aura of death. It descended from the sky and grabbed Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro. The giant claw came silently, but its power was enough to destroy the heavens and the earth. Yi Ya thought that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro would not be able to resist his attack because they were distracted. But he did not expect that Ji Tianxing would stare at him coldly and lock onto his divine soul aura as soon as the claw of annihilation appeared. Star-shattering fist. Ji Tianxing suddenly raised his left hand and fiercely blasted out a golden fist aura that was 10,000 feet long towards the claw of annihilation. Boom! The fist and the claw were both the size of a mountain and contained terrifying power. The two collided loudly, and a thunderous sound erupted. At the same time, they exploded in the sky and shattered into pieces. Thousands of fragments scattered in the sky. Ji Tianxing took the opportunity to rush towards Yi Ya and used his ultimate technique with the Burial of Heaven. Moon-breaking sword. A colorful sword aura that was 10,000 feet long appeared out of thin air and slashed towards Yi Ya with the power to destroy everything. This sword not only contained 100% of Ji Tianxing's Dharma power but also the power of 3 types of lightning. It was very powerful. Yi Ya's expression changed on the spot. His eyes were filled with terror. In a moment of desperation, black light surged out of his body and formed layers of black wings to protect himself. Bam! The 10,000 feet long giant sword hit him and there was a loud explosion. His body flashed with light and his black wings were all shattered. He was also sent flying in a sorry state. While he was still in midair, he had already opened his mouth and spat out dark red blood. A long and narrow wound split open on his chest and blood gushed out like a fountain. Yi Ya flew for a full 5 kilometers before crashing into the rubble, splashing rocks and dirt all over the sky. He could not believe that Ji Tianxing had actually broken through his defense and severely injured him with one strike. Fear filled his heart. He quickly crawled out of the rubble and turned to flee without hesitation, flying towards the depths of the flaming mountain. Chapter 1780. Ji Tianxing's killing intent had already risen, so how could he let Yi Ya go? When he successfully passed the tribulation and woke up, he made up his mind to kill Yi Ya to prevent future troubles. Swoosh! A golden light flashed, and he flew across the sky at lightning speed, chasing after Yi Ya. Yun Yaro also entered the reverse water divine sword and drove it to chase after him. After a few breaths, both sides disappeared into the depths of the sea of fire. Both Honorable Sword Martial Lord and Chen Yu frowned, their eyes revealing worry. "I can't believe it. That kid has just stepped into the crossing calamity realm, and he can defeat that 7th level crossing calamity realm powerhouse. In my memory, It's already an incredible miracle for a first-level crossing Calamity Realm powerhouse to defeat a fourth-level crossing Calamity Realm powerhouse. That kid can actually cross 6 levels to defeat a strong enemy. It's simply unprecedented. Both of them were filled with shock and still found it hard to believe. Chen Yu thought for a moment and said worriedly, looking at the direction that the black-clothed man fled, "It's obvious that he went deep into the Flaming Mountain. Martial Uncle, we also have to go deep into the Flaming Mountain to look for traces of the glazed fire dragon. Should we chase after him?" Honorable Sword Martial Lord nodded and said, "Of course, I want to see how monstrous that kid is." After saying that, he flew across the sky with Chen Yu and also flew deep into the Flaming Mountain. 100 miles away, Madame Jin, Ji Yu, and Rong were all silent with complicated expressions. Especially Rong her originally bright eyes had become somewhat dim, and her excited mood had also calmed down. After all, everyone saw that a woman in a white dress had appeared in the ice blue sword. The woman in the white dress was as beautiful as a fairy, and her temperament was otherworldly. She was a rare beauty in the world. Most importantly, the relationship between the woman in the white dress and Ji Tianxing was not shallow. They were quite close and looked like a couple. Seeing that Rong mood was somewhat low, Ji Yu comforted her. "Rong, you don't have to be disappointed. We haven't come into contact with that young master yet. Who knows if the woman in the white dress is his partner or his friend?" Rong shook her head gently and said, "Master's wife, don't worry. Rong is fine. Even if she had some regret and disappointment in her heart, how could she show it? Wouldn't that be a joke?" Ji Yu understood her temperament and continued to persuade her. "Although the woman in white is a rare beauty in the world, our Rong is not bad either. Most importantly, Rong, your status is noble, and your strength is not ordinary. In short, you still have a chance." Rong became more and more embarrassed. She quickly turned around and lowered her head. "Mistress, please don't say any more. Rong doesn't have such thoughts." Ji Yu wanted to persuade her again, but Madame Jin waved her hand to stop her. "They've already left. If you continue to dawdle, we won't be able to catch up." Rong said in a low voice, "Granny, there's no need to chase after him. It's already our honor to be able to witness a peerless genius survive 9 bolts of lightning. As for the rest, Rong doesn't have any extravagant hopes." Madame Jin glanced at her and said with a kind smile, "Silly child, what are you thinking? They're heading towards the depths of the blazing mountain, and we're heading there too. No matter if we meet that young master or not, we still have to carry out the plan and search for the glazed fire dragon." Only then did Rong understand that she had misunderstood. She suddenly became even more embarrassed. Madame Jin no longer said anything. She took the two of them across the sky and flew towards the north. Yi's body was wrapped in a layer of cold black light. He turned into a 3-foot-long blackbird and was galloping in the sea of fire. Although he was injured by Ji Tianxing, the injury was not serious. In the process of escaping, he had already taken a healing pill, temporarily suppressing his injuries. However, he had just fought a big battle and flew continuously in the sea of fire for 4 hours. He had consumed a lot of his spiritual power. He already felt that his strength was falling short of his desire, and his flying speed was gradually slowing down. Looking back, in the sea of fire 10 miles away, there were 2 rays of light, one gold and one blue, chasing after him. Yi tilted his head and cursed fiercely, "This pair of bitches has been chasing me for 4 hours, and they still don't want to give up. Humph. I'll let you be arrogant for a while. When I meet up with the first master, I'll come and take your lives." Yi calculated in his heart. In another hour or so, he would be able to reach the vicinity of the glazed fire dragon's lair and meet up with the first master. At that time, he would definitely kill Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow ruthlessly to wash away the previous shame. However, Yi was scheming in his heart, but he did not know that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow also had a purpose. The two of them had been following behind Yi, maintaining a distance of 10 miles. They could not only put a lot of pressure on Yi, but also not let him escape. Yun Yarrow was a little puzzled, so she secretly asked Ji Tianxing, "Tianxing, if you want to catch up with Yi, you only need to fly on your sword. You will be able to stop him soon. We have already chased him for tens of thousands of miles." Why haven't you made a move yet? Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a playful smile, and he explained unhurriedly, what is our purpose in coming to the Flaming Mountain this time? Yun Yarrow replied without hesitation, we are looking for the materials to repair the divine sword, as well as the legendary glazed fire dragon. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, that's right. The materials to repair the divine sword have been gathered, and my heavenly tribulation has passed. Now, we only have to find the glazed fire dragon. We rushed into the Flaming Mountain rashly without any informants or sources of information. It will be very difficult to find traces of the glazed fire dragon. But Yi Ya is the leader of the Black Feather Gang, and he has information and intelligence about the glazed fire dragon. When he robbed us before, a bandit said that they were rushing to support the First Master. So I'm sure that the First Master of the Black Feather Gang is most likely in the depths of the Flaming Mountain, and he has most likely found the glazed fire dragon. Hearing what he said, Yun Yarrow's eyes suddenly lit up, and she said with some surprise, Tianxing, you are really meticulous. You actually remembered this detail. No wonder Yi Ya didn't escape from the Flaming Mountain after being injured by you, but instead fled into the depths of the Flaming Mountain. From this, it seems that he wants to meet up with the First Master of the Black Feather Gang, and then kill us for revenge. That's right. Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a playful tone, we need Yi Ya to lead the way and help us find the glazed fire dragon, so we can't kill him now. But when he is about to meet up with the First Master of the Black Feather Gang, his death will come. Only then did Yun Yarrow understand his plan, and she couldn't help but nod in agreement. After a pause, she asked again, by the way, Tianxing, the 4 materials to repair the divine sword have been gathered. When do you plan to repair the divine sword? Ji Tianxing said calmly, the 4 materials can not only repair the burial of Heaven sword, but also restore the divine sword to the holy level. But I have asked the burial of Heaven, and it must be repaired by a martial sage expert and a holy level cauldron. Chapter 1781. Unknowingly, another hour had passed. Yi Ya flew desperately for more than 10,000 miles before he finally saw the light of hope. Under his feet was an undulating mountain range, and around him was a boundless sea of fire. However, in the distance, in the sky that was illuminated by the flames, there were flashes of Dharma spell brilliance that streaked across the sky like lightning. There was also a fiery red figure that was as tall as a mountain circling in the sky, constantly shattering the Dharma spell brilliance that filled the sky. That fiery red figure was very majestic and mighty. It was the legendary glazed fire dragon. It was obvious that the glazed fire dragon was fighting with many experts. The two sides were fighting an earth-shattering battle that could be seen tens of thousands of miles away. Accompanied by countless dazzling lights, there were also loud and furious dragon roars that came from the sky. Seeing such a scene, Yi Ya was shocked, and his eyes were filled with anticipation. That's great. The First Master and my brothers must be waiting for me there. At most, I'll be able to meet up with them in another hour. Yi Ya muttered to himself excitedly. His fatigue dissipated, and he became energetic. However, at this moment, he suddenly sensed an extremely dangerous aura behind him. He sensed that something was wrong and turned his head to look back. He was instantly dumbfounded. Unbeknownst to him, Ji Tianxing and the reverse water godly sword had actually flown 3,000 meters behind him and brazenly launched an attack. A blazing white sword light that was hundreds of feet long and that huge ice blue divine sword was slashing down at him like an aurora. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sword light and the divine sword attacked from both sides, locking onto Yi Ya's divine soul aura, making it impossible for him to escape. His eyes widened in shock, anger, and disbelief. No. How is this possible? How did they suddenly catch up? Yi Ya had been chased for more than 4 hours, and the other party had not been able to catch up to him. This made him mistakenly think that the other party only had this much strength and means. But now, the sudden attack had shattered his hopes and plans, and caused him to be filled with terror. Space Underworld escape. At this critical moment, Yi Ya did not hesitate to use his full strength and used his ultimate escape technique. He flapped his pitch-black wings and used a great ability to break through the sky, instantly teleporting 20 miles away. Shua! With a flash of light, he appeared in the sky 20 miles away. The blazing white sword light missed its target and slashed into a mountain, causing a loud rumbling sound to ring out. The light golden mountain peak was slashed open by the sword ray, and a huge ravine was formed, causing the sky to be filled with shattered rocks. However, the 300-meter-long water reversal divine sword seemed to have eyes. It also tore through the air and teleported 20 miles, catching up with Yi. Boom! With a muffled sound, the reverse water sword struck Yi, causing him to fall from the sky and crash into the mountain range below. The black light shield protecting him was shattered by the divine sword. His back had also been slashed open by the divine sword. It was at least 2 feet long and was so deep that his bones could be seen. Fresh blood was gushing out. The unimaginable force caused him to crash heavily into a mountain peak that was thousands of meters tall. He had smashed a huge hole in the faint golden rock ground. The surrounding cracks were densely packed, and countless rocks and soil were splashed out. The entire mountain began to shake, as if it was unable to bear the weight and was about to collapse. However, the pain his body was enduring was nothing compared to the shock in his heart. Shua. He quickly got up, crawled out of the deep hole, and flew back into the sky. Before he could escape, Ji Tianxing had already caught up and blocked his path. The reverse water sword also floated behind him, blocking his escape route. He was surrounded and had no way to advance or retreat. However, he was a famous martial monarch. Even if he was in danger, he could still maintain his calm. He returned to his original form and returned to the appearance of the black-robed man. He stared coldly at Ji Tianxing and asked in a deep voice, "Boy, you were hiding your strength before? You deliberately chased me here?" At this point, if he still didn't understand what was going on, then he wouldn't be the second-in-command of the Black Feather Gang. Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, "Not bad, you're not too stupid." Yi sneered with a sinister face and cursed with resentment, "Little bastard, you actually dared to use me to find the traces of the glazed fire dragon. You're really audacious and reckless." Ji Tianxing still said indifferently, "I've already done so and succeeded. You've lost your value and can die." "Ha ha." Yi sneered again, "Boy, you're despicable enough, but you forgot that I've already passed the 7th heavenly tribulation. How could I be so easy to deal with? Moreover, I'm the second-in-command of the Black Feather Gang. If you want to kill me, you'd better think about whether you're qualified to bear the revenge of the Black Feather Gang." Ji Tianxing still looked indifferent and said indifferently, "So what if you've passed the 7th heavenly tribulation? To me, no one below the martial saint realm is a match for me. Killing you is as easy as flipping my hand. As for the Black Feather Gang, a gang that I've never heard of, what can they do to me?" His relaxed and indifferent tone and calm demeanor all revealed his absolute confidence and domineering attitude. Yi was also intimidated by Ji Tianxing's domineering aura. He immediately revealed a stunned expression and was somewhat stunned. However, he could see that Ji Tianxing was not lying and was definitely not bluffing. His intimidation had failed and he became angry from embarrassment. His face became ferocious. He pointed to the sky in front of him and shouted angrily, "Boy, the leader of the Black Feather Gang is just in front of you, just 10,000 miles away. If you know what's good for you, retreat now and I can pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, before you can defeat this sovereign, First Master will rush over and tear you to shred." Yi's strength and identity could no longer suppress Ji Tianxing. He could only use the leader as his backer and hope that Ji Tianxing would have some scruples. Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and asked in a low voice, "The leader of the Black Feather Gang? Has he reached the martial saint realm?" "Ah, I haven't." Yi was stunned for a moment but still chose to tell the truth. After all, even if he made up nonsense, he could not hide it from Ji Tianxing. "Of course," he added confidently, "the leader's strength far surpasses mine and he has already passed the 8th stage of the heavenly tribulation." Before he could finish his sentence, Ji Tianxing interrupted him and said expressionlessly, "Since he has not reached the martial sage realm, let him come and save you. You can kill him as well." Ji Tianxing said it very casually, as if he was talking about something like eating and drinking, careless. Yi was dumbfounded on the spot and stared at Ji Tianxing with his eyes bulging. The strong sense of anger and humiliation almost made him go berserk. However, He had no way to refute her, and his face turned purple with anger. He really could not understand. Ji Tianxing had just passed the first heavenly tribulation and reached the first stage of the tribulation-passing realm. Where did he get such strong confidence? He only had the strength of the first stage of the tribulation-passing realm, and he did not put an 8 tribulation martial lord in his eyes. Chapter 1782. Of course, Ji Tianxing was just joking. He would not ask for trouble and give Yi Ya a chance to ask for help. If Yi Ya sent a message to the Black Feather Gang's leader for help, it would not only bring trouble but also delay time. Ji Tianxing decided to end the battle quickly. Taking advantage of Yi Ya's rage and distraction, he decisively made his move. Sword thrust. The burial of heaven stabbed forward, and a cold light bloomed, quickly disappearing into the sea of fire. The next moment, Yi Ya sensed that something was wrong and was about to teleport away. That dot of cold light had already pierced his chest, piercing through his soft armor and flesh. A dazzling cold light exploded in his chest, like fireworks. Bam! A loud explosion shook the sky as the cold light rose into the sky like a mushroom cloud. The dazzling white light drowned Yi Ya's body. The terrifying explosive force tore his chest apart. His flesh and internal organs were blasted into pieces. He tumbled and flew out for more than 10 miles before falling from the sky. When he smashed into a mountain peak, his upper body was a bloody mess, leaving only a skeleton. Pieces of flesh and organs hung from the broken and incomplete skeleton. There were not many pieces of flesh left on his shoulders, revealing his blackened bones. Even half of his head had been blown up, and it was a bloody mess. If it were anyone else, their body would have died after suffering such heavy injuries. However, Yi Ya was different. He was a 7th-level tribulation transcendence realm expert after all, and his vitality was extremely tenacious. His body was not dead yet, only heavily injured. He got up from the ground, quietly took out a chopstick-sized arrow token, and activated the array formation within. Whoosh! The arrow token turned into a wisp of black light, quickly flew into the sky, and disappeared. After sending out the arrow token, he hurriedly used a secret technique to release a surging black light that enveloped his body. The black light enveloped his wounds, and his flesh and blood were reconstructing at a speed visible to the naked eye. He would be able to recover from his injuries in 10 breaths at most. Of course, that could only temporarily repair the missing flesh and blood and maintain the vitality of his body. If he wanted to truly recover from his injuries, he would have to go into seclusion for 2 to 3 years. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing would not give him the chance to heal. 10 breaths of time was enough for Ji Tianxing to kill him several times over. Shua! With a flash of golden light, Ji Tianxing teleported another 20 miles and arrived in front of Yi Ya. Thunder! Ji Tianxing let out a low growl and opened the third eye on his forehead. His mysterious and deep eyes released an endless amount of lightning. Golden, purple, and blue lightning condensed into a 300-meter-long pillar of lightning that struck Yi Ya. Boom! At that instant, thunder rumbled while an enormous bang shook the heavens, and it wasn't inferior to Ji Tianxing's tribulation in the slightest. The 3 different colored lightning pillars contained the power of 3 different attributes, and their might was extremely violent. Yi Ya's heavily injured body was shattered by the lightning on the spot, turning into countless charred pieces that scattered in all directions. This time, his body was completely destroyed. The 1,000-feet-tall Golden Mountain was also shattered by the thunderbolts, collapsing into a pile of ruins with a deafening rumble. A black bird that looked like a crow flew out of the smoke and lightning in the sky. It wasn't a physical object, but Yi Ya's divine soul. After it escaped from the area covered by the lightning, it fled towards the north in horror, bursting out with its fastest speed. However, Yun Yarrow was already ready. Shua! The 300-meter-long water-reversing divine sword slashed down from the side with an overwhelming icy blue light, drowning Yi Ya's divine soul. Bang! At that moment, Yun Yarrow used a spell to maximize the power of the water-reversing divine sword. Yi Ya's divine soul was directly shattered by the divine sword, turning into thousands of wisps of black chi that scattered in the sea of fire. He couldn't resist the water-reversing divine sword at all. When the icy blue brilliance dissipated, The black chi that scattered between heaven and earth was also burned into nothingness by the azure glass heavenly fire. The second-in-command of the Black Feather Gang, a martial lord at the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, died in the depths of the flaming mountain. The huge water-reversing divine sword quickly shrank to 3 feet long. With a flash of light, Yun Yarrow flew out of the divine sword and appeared in the sky. Holding the water-reversing divine sword in her hand, she walked to Ji Tianxing and stood still. Phew! I've finally dealt with these despicable bandits. I don't have to be entangled by them anymore. Yun Yarrow put away the water-reversing divine sword and heaved a sigh of relief. Ji Tianxing nodded and said calmly, Yi Ya and those ordinary bandits are nothing to worry about. The key is the leader of the Black Feather Gang. I'm afraid it's not easy to deal with. Before Yi Ya was killed, he released a black light. It seemed to be a message arrow. In my opinion, he must have sent it to the leader of the Black Feather Gang. We have to be careful. The people of the Black Feather Gang will definitely take revenge on us. Yun Yarrow stared at him and said with a teasing smile, Didn't you just say that you are invincible below the martial sage realm? The leader of the Black Feather Gang is not a martial sage. Even if he comes, he will definitely die. Ji Tianxing said calmly, I was just saying. You believe my words to scare Yi Ya? Yun Yarrow rolled her eyes at him. At this moment, Ji Tianxing turned to look at the sky behind him and said in a deep voice, The two of you don't have to hide. Come out. However, the sky within 100 miles was quiet. Other than the surging sea of fire, there was no other figure. Ji Tianxing waited for a moment and continued, The two of you, it's not like we haven't met before. Why are you hiding? Obviously, he had discovered the other party. Not only were there 2 people, but they had met before. As his voice fell, 2 figures appeared in the sky 30 miles away. One was an old man in a purple robe, and the other was a young man in a black suit, carrying a broadsword on his back. These 2 people were Martial Lord Brightsword and Chen Yu. The 2 of them had secretly followed Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow. Just now, they had hidden nearby and witnessed the process of Yi Ya being killed with their own eyes. The 2 of them were filled with shock and were very afraid of Ji Tianxing. At this moment, their whereabouts had been seen through by Ji Tianxing. The 2 of them were forced to appear, and they were both somewhat embarrassed and distressed. Chen Yu lowered his head slightly and put on an expressionless appearance. He did not dare to look directly into Ji Tianxing's eyes. Martial Lord Brightsword stroked his beard and looked at Ji Tianxing expressionlessly. He pretended to be calm and said, Little friend, I was passing by this place. I didn't expect to meet you again. It's really fate. Ji Tianxing sneered in his heart, but his expression did not change. He said indifferently, This is the hinterland of the Flaming Mountain. There are countless experts and glazed fire dragons roaming about. It's very dangerous. You 2 old, weak, and disabled people are actually wandering around here. Aren't you afraid of losing your lives? This is not a place you should come to. Quickly leave. His expression and tone were filled with disdain, as if he was a strong person looking down on the weak. Martial Lord Brightsword and Chen Yu's expressions changed drastically. They were humiliated to the point that their faces turned ashen. The blood in their bodies flowed in reverse, and they almost spat out a mouthful of blood. It was because what Ji Tianxing said was exactly what Martial Lord Brightsword had said back then. Chapter 1783. The thick anger and humiliation caused Brightsword Martial Lord and Chen Yu to tremble in anger. Chen Yu was still fine, but Brightsword Martial Lord was a famous expert who had been living like a prince for many years. In the empire he belonged to, no matter where he went, he was treated as an honored guest by many forces and was respected and flattered by countless martial artists. He relied on his noble status and martial arts experience, and always considered himself a martial arts senior. It was because of this that when he saw Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow barge into the blazing mountain, he gave them a few pointers. But he never would have thought that Ji Tianxing would return the words he said to him without missing a word. Moreover, Ji Tianxing's tone and attitude were even more arrogant. How could Brightsword Martial Lord accept this? But what could he do if he didn't endure it? Even Yi Ya had been killed by Ji Tianxing. How could he dare to shed all pretense of cordiality with Ji Tianxing? He took a few deep breaths and barely suppressed his anger. He stared at Ji Tianxing with a gloomy gaze and said in a deep voice, "Young man, don't be so arrogant when you're young. You still have a long way to go. When you're outside, it's best to restrain yourself. If you can't even distinguish between superior and inferior, you'll definitely suffer a great loss in the future." Ji Tianxing immediately revealed a sneer and said with a mocking tone, "Superior and inferior? Who do you think is superior and inferior? Who is superior and who is inferior? There's no need to wait for the future. I want to see right now, what kind of loss can you make me suffer?" He stared coldly at Bright Sword Martial Lord. His gaze and tone were extremely sharp, as if he was going to confront him head-on. Bright Sword Martial Lord's face immediately turned ashen. His lungs were about to explode from anger, but he was still unable to flare up. When Chen Yu saw that his martial uncle was humiliated, his blood surged and he shouted angrily, "Brat! You're too arrogant. My martial uncle is a highly respected martial arts senior, an expert who has been famous for many years. Previously, outside the Blazing Mountain, he only reminded you out of kindness. I didn't expect that you would be so narrow-minded and seek revenge for the smallest grievance. You really don't know what's good for you." Ji Tianxing looked at Chen Yu indifferently and sneered, "Hey, you only reminded us out of kindness? I don't think so. We don't even know you. Do we need you to remind us? All of you are meddling in other people's business." At the same time, he took advantage of his seniority and put on a high and mighty attitude. "You think you are kind, but in fact, you think you are better than others. Now, I'm reminding you out of goodwill to leave this place as soon as possible. Why don't you accept my kind reminder?" Moreover, he looks so angry that he's about to go crazy. Speaking to there, he looked at the Honorable Sword Martial Lord with disdain, sneered, and said, "You opened your mouth to berate others, which is a kind reminder. I'm also reminding you, so how is that not knowing what's good for me? No matter what you say, you are always in the right. You're already so old, don't you have any shame?" Ji Tianxing's series of words had exposed Bright Sword Martial Lord and Chen Yu's background, causing the two of them to feel extremely ashamed and indignant. Chen Yu was so angry that his face turned black. His eyes were dyed with a layer of blood red. He was already on the verge of going berserk. Bright Sword Martial Lord was also so angry that his hands were trembling. He was so humiliated that he almost vomited blood. Seeing this, Chen Yu reached out to grab the sword hilt behind his back, as if he was about to draw his sword. Bright Sword Martial Lord hurriedly raised his hand to stop him. He said with a sound transmission, "Chen Yu, don't be impulsive. Bear with it for a while and calm down. Don't forget our goal. It's not a wise move to make a move against this brat now." Chen Yu could only suppress his anger and slowly retract his right hand. He stared coldly at Ji Tianxing and said in a deep voice, "Brat, I'll let you be arrogant for a while. My martial uncle is magnanimous and won't lower himself to your level. But don't forget, there is always someone better than you. There will always be someone who can teach you a lesson." Ji Tianxing's smile became even more playful. He said with a mocking tone, "You guys want to lower yourself to my level, but do you have the ability?" Such a straightforward provocation and humiliation caused Bright Sword Martial Lord's face to turn black. Under his anger, he actually spat out a mouthful of blood. Chen Yu also went completely berserk. With a clang, he pulled out the broadsword on his back. With a roar, he charged towards Ji Tianxing. "You bastard, I'll fight it out with you." Chen Yu held the sword with both hands. His entire body ignited with scarlet flames. He used all his strength to slash out a 100-meter-long flame sword. He was a 4th-level Tribulation Realm expert. Under his rage, he launched an attack. The power of this sword was unstoppable. However, Ji Tianxing didn't take it seriously at all. With an indifferent expression, he waved his sleeves and struck out a resplendent golden light with his right hand. A huge golden palm shadow slashed towards the sword light. Boom! With a crisp explosion, the flame sword was shattered by the palm shadow on the spot. The power of the golden palm didn't dissipate. It struck Chen Yu again, sending him flying 10 miles away. Chen Yu drew an arc in the sky and smashed into a mountain peak, causing rubble to fly all over the sky. When he got up, his mouth and nose were already bleeding and his eyes were seeing stars. "Ah, I'm going to kill you." Chen Yu was completely enraged. Like a lion that had lost its mind, he let out a furious roar and once again charged towards Ji Tianxing. However, just as he was halfway there, he was stopped by Bright Sword Martial Lord. "Chen Yu, stop." Bright Sword Martial Lord waved his sleeve and shot out an icy blue brilliance that wrapped around Chen Yu. Chen Yu was unable to break free. His anger and manic emotions were quickly suppressed and he gradually regained his calm. Bright Sword Martial Lord brought him into the sky and flew towards the depths of the flaming mountain. Before leaving, he turned his head to look at Ji Tianxing and left a sentence with a gloomy expression. "Brat, it's easy to break if you're too hard. Sooner or later, you'll die prematurely." Bright Sword Martial Lord was cursing Ji Tianxing. His thoughts were extremely vicious. Ji Tianxing also returned the favor and shouted disdainfully, "I'll spare your lives today, just to teach you a lesson. Old man, remember, don't meddle in other people's business in the future. Don't rely on your seniority to judge the world. Otherwise, sooner or later, you'll attract a calamity." Bright Sword Martial Lord coldly snorted and no longer argued with him. He quickly left with Chen Yu. When the two of them were far away, Ji Tianxing's expression finally returned to normal. He rushed forward with Yun Yaro. Yun Yaro looked at him with a strange expression and secretly asked, "Tianxing, in the past, you were indifferent and wouldn't punish those two fellows like this. Now, not only has your temperament changed, your temperament has also changed to do as you please. Could it be that Kenshin had such a personality back then?" "That's not it." Ji Tianxing chuckled and said, "Kenshin's temperament was too cold and indifferent. He was more like a god in the sky and not like a mortal. Because of this, even though he ascended to the upper realm and became the king of gods, he let down too many people and left behind many regrets." Chapter 1784. Yun Yaro's intuition was right. Ji Tianxing had indeed changed. Ever since he had transcended the tribulation and awakened a portion of Kenshin's memories, his temperament had changed. He was dignified without being angry, as if he was a god that had descended from the 9 heavens, majestic and noble. At the same time, his temperament had also changed. In the past, he was modest and polite, had a mild temperament, and was kind. He would not easily offend others. But now, he was like an unsheathed divine sword, sharp and unstoppable. Yun Yaro thought to herself, the Kenshin of the past was too cold, like a god that did not eat the food of mortals. He lacked a bit of humanity. The Tianxing of the past was too modest and kind, and his temperament was indifferent. He was often taken advantage of. Perhaps, the current him is the most suitable and the most genuine? Thinking of this, a touch of gratification and anticipation flashed in her eyes. She knew that Ji Tianxing had now completed his transformation and had truly grown into a martial arts powerhouse. The battlefield where the glazed fire dragon and the many powerhouses were fighting was tens of thousands of miles away from Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro. The two of them continued to fly north for 4 hours before arriving near the battlefield. However, when the two of them arrived, the battle had already ended. The spell light that blotted out the sky had already dissipated, and the fire dragon that was hundreds of miles long had also disappeared. When the two of them arrived at the battlefield, they only saw that the mountain range within a 1,000-mile radius was in a complete mess. In the golden glazed fire dragon, there were broken rocks and collapsed mountain ranges everywhere. The ground was covered with ravines, densely packed like a spider web. There were also countless deep pits, like abysses. There were still remnants of chaotic dharmic power fluctuations in the air, as well as the aura of powerhouses from various races. In the ruins within a 1,000-mile radius, there were still some scattered fragments of Dharma treasures and some minced flesh and bones. Under the burning of the glazed fire dragon, those Dharma treasures, weapons, and pieces of corpses would soon be burned to ashes. Ji Tianxing could imagine that the destruction caused by the battle between those powerhouses and the glazed fire dragon was extremely shocking. However, he and Yun Yaro searched the entire battlefield and only saw a few adventurers. Those adventurers were all in the tribulation realm. 2 of them were seriously injured and left the battlefield with gloomy expressions. They had no choice but to leave the mountain of flames. The other few people, like the two of them, had just rushed over. Other than that, the experts who had fought with the glazed fire dragon were nowhere to be found. Yun Yarrow was a little puzzled. She transmitted her voice and asked, "Tianxing, where did those experts go? Could it be that the glazed fire dragon has escaped and they are still chasing after it?" Tianxing nodded and said, "That should be the case. I used a secret technique to investigate the area. There are definitely remnants of those experts' auras in the vicinity." After saying that, he formed a seal with both hands and activated a secret technique. When he formed a mysterious seal with his fingers, his palms immediately shone with a golden light. "Open heaven, divine eyes!" With a low shout, he pressed his index and middle fingers together and pressed them against the third eye on his forehead. Suddenly, the third eye opened, and a mysterious golden light shone from the pupil. In the open heaven divine eyes, the scene he saw changed. In the turbulent golden sea of flames, there were thousands of colorful threads floating. They were gradually fading and becoming thinner and thinner. Those colorful threads were the remnants of the auras of the Tribulation Realm experts. He could clearly see that most of the colorful threads in the sky were pointing north. Therefore, he continued to fly north with Yun Yarrow. "Follow me. We will find them soon." Yun Yarrow did not doubt his words at all. She hurriedly followed him and flew north. The two of them shuttled through the sea of flames as fast as lightning. Along the way, Tianxing used the open heaven divine eyes to see that there were countless colorful threads left in the sky. Yun Yarrow also used her divine sense to observe that there were many traces of fighting on the ground and in the mountains below. About an hour later, the two of them flew more than 10,000 miles. Tianxing's open heaven divine eyes had already lost its power and naturally dissipated. He and Yun Yarrow could see that there was a huge flame vortex in the mountains in front of them. The vortex, with a radius of 100 miles, was formed by golden heavenly flames and was tens of thousands of feet high. The vortex was located in a wide valley surrounded by majestic mountain ranges. Around the flame vortex, there were dozens of auras of the Tribulation Realm experts. Some were fierce and domineering, while others were gloomy and low-key. In addition, there were occasionally figures of martial artists flashing in the sky. "It's here." Tianxing raised his eyebrows, and a hint of hope flashed in his eyes. Yun Yarrow looked at the flame vortex and said with a serious expression, "Tianxing, there are at least 30 Tribulation Realm experts hiding around the flame vortex. It seems that there is something strange about the flame vortex. It is very likely to be the hiding place of the glazed fire dragon." "Yes." Tianxing nodded and said, "Let's also go and take a look. We will act according to the situation." After a while, the two of them arrived near the flame vortex. Both of them used the invisibility secret technique and hid on top of a mountain, observing from above. They saw that the valley at the foot of the mountain was an abyss with a radius of 100 miles. The glazed fire dragon was constantly gushing out from the abyss, releasing a violent impact that condensed into a huge vortex. The dazzling flame vortex covered the entire abyss, making it impossible for people to see the situation inside. Tianxing released his soul consciousness to explore. After exploring for 30 miles, his soul consciousness was blocked by an invisible force and could not reach the bottom of the abyss. Obviously, the mysterious abyss of heavenly flames was much deeper than 30 miles. Moreover, the abyss contained an extremely terrifying power. Tianxing looked around the abyss again. The surrounding mountains were straight and steep, forming a circle of cliffs. After a quarter of an hour, he finished his observation and had a general understanding of the abyss of heavenly flames. Yun Yarrow secretly sent him a voice transmission. "Tianxing, I see that those Tribulation Realm experts are lurking around the abyss. They seem to be afraid of the abyss and don't dare to enter it." Tianxing nodded slightly and explained, those powerful experts had fought the flame-glazed dragon earlier, and all of them suffered some minor or serious injuries. They followed the glazed fire dragon here. When they saw the glazed fire dragon enter the abyss, they didn't dare to chase after it. They had to stay near the abyss to heal their wounds. Yun Yarrow was a little surprised. "How do you know it so clearly? As if you saw it with your own eyes." "It's just my speculation." Tianxing revealed a faint smile and explained, I've already detected the remnant aura of the divine dragon in the abyss. Basically, I'm sure that the glazed fire dragon escaped into this abyss. Yun Yarrow thought for a while and asked, those experts are injured and don't dare to enter the abyss rashly. We have the reverse water divine sword, which can restrain the glazed fire dragon. How about we take the initiative and enter the abyss to explore? Ji Tianxing chuckled and waved his hand. Don't worry. We're new here. If we rush in rashly, we won't be able to achieve anything. Chapter 1785. Yun Yarrow had always believed in Ji Tianxing's words. She suppressed the anticipation in her heart, quietly observed, and waited patiently. Like Ji Tianxing, she remained invisible and hid in the 1,000-feet-high peak. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. The abyss of heavenly fire had been very calm. There were no strange phenomena or sounds. However, there were constantly powerhouses rushing to the abyss and hiding in the mountains to observe the situation. Ji Tianxing was very patient. While waiting, he chatted with Yun Yarrow. Yarrow, it is said that the glazed fire dragon's strength has not reached the martial sage realm. After I catch it, I will give it to you as a mount. How about it? Yun Yarrow shook her head gently and said, that is a divine dragon above the 8th level of the tribulation stage. How can it be easily caught by you? However, if you can get the glazed fire dragon, it will be a great surprise. Ji Tianxing chuckled and said, I have a black dragon. If you get a glazed fire dragon, we can travel the world in the future. Yun Yarrow was a little tempted and nodded with a smile. The two chatted for a while, then fell silent and continued to wait. Soon, half a day passed. The abyss of heavenly fire was still calm and there was nothing unusual. However, some people lost their patience and were ready to make a move. There was a group of powerhouses who had not fought with the glazed fire dragon before and rushed here. They secretly observed for a long time and finally decided to take action after considering for a long time. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 powerhouses flew over the sea of fire and entered the abyss of heavenly fire. The strength of these 3 people had reached the 4th level of the tribulation stage. They were experienced adventurers. Although they took the lead and seemed a little impatient and reckless. However, they had carefully considered their actions and were very cautious. After entering the abyss, they flew down unhurriedly. They held their magic treasures and weapons and were on guard against their surroundings at all times. After a while, the 3 of them disappeared into the sea of fire. The powerhouses lurking around the abyss released their invisible divine senses and secretly observed the movements of the 3 people. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were no exception. They used their divine senses to stare at the 3 people. Soon, 15 minutes passed. The 3 powerhouses flew down for about 30 miles and remained safe and sound. However, there was an invisible barrier that could block the probing of divine sense. It took a lot of effort for the 3 powerhouses to pass through the invisible barrier and continue to fly down. They had left the detection range of everyone's divine sense, which was equivalent to disappearing. Many experts couldn't find any traces of the 3 people, and they all started to have doubts in their hearts. Not long after, an earth-shattering dragon roar came from the abyss. Roar. Following the loud sound, the entire abyss began to tremble. Immediately after, a torrential scarlet fire emerged from the abyss, as well as a 5-colored brilliance of magic power. Boom! Endless heavenly fire and mana light converged into a huge light pillar that shot up into the sky from the abyss. The experts around the abyss were shocked and realized that the situation was not good. As expected, the rumbling sounds of fighting immediately came from the abyss. Along with the sound of spells exploding, there were also a few screams and cries of pain. A few breaths later, a pale blue light burst out from the abyss. Swoosh! In the pale blue brilliance was a man in armor. It was one of the 3 adventurers from before. He had already lost an arm and a leg, and his body was dripping with blood. His injuries were very serious. He was so scared that his soul almost left his body. He desperately tried to escape. However, just as he was about to escape halfway and was about 20 miles away from leaving the abyss, he was caught by a dark golden dragon claw. That huge dragon claw was as big as a palace. It was dark golden all over, like glass. The dragon claw was very thick and powerful. The sharp nails seemed to be indestructible. The surface was covered with golden dragon scales, and its defensive power was very strong. After the armored man was caught by the dragon claw, his screams came to an abrupt end, and he immediately stopped moving. Following a burst of cracking sounds, he was crushed into pieces by the dragon claw, turning into a pile of flesh and blood that scattered in the abyss. Even his soul was crushed by the dragon claw, turning into hundreds of pieces and burned into nothingness by the heavenly fire. The huge dragon claw retracted. Peace was restored in the heavenly fire abyss, as if nothing had happened. The powerhouses around the abyss saw this scene with their own eyes, and they were all full of horror. Especially those powerhouses who had just arrived and had not fought with the glazed fiery dragon. Seeing the terrifying means of the glazed fiery dragon, their mouths and tongues were dry, and their hearts were pounding. The death of the three adventurers extinguished the restless hearts of the crowd, and everyone calmed down. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow looked at each other with dignified eyes. Yun Yarrow frowned and analyzed. The strength of the three adventurers is not bad, but they didn't even last for 10 breaths. The glazed fiery dragon is too strong. Tianxing, I think this abyss is strange. It is very likely to be the lair of the glazed fiery dragon. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, I observed the dragon claw just now, and I can roughly judge the strength of the glazed fiery dragon. It is between the 8th level of the crossing tribulation realm and the martial sage realm. This abyss should be its lair. There are other mysteries in it, so we can't rush in rashly. Yun Yarrow agreed and continued to analyze. The glazed fiery dragon is so powerful, but it hides in the abyss and refuses to come out. I guess it is also injured, or its strength has faded. It's very possible. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, let's continue to wait and let those people explore first to consume the power of the glazed fiery dragon. If we want to get the glazed fiery dragon, we can't be in a hurry. The one who can persist to the end has the greatest chance of success. After making up their minds, the two continued to hide in the mountain and secretly observe the situation. Peace was restored around the abyss. Unknowingly, a whole day passed. The death of the three adventurers deterred many powerhouses, and no one dared to act rashly. However, on the second day, some people couldn't hold back anymore. 4 oddly dressed powerhouses broke into the abyss together. Their figures and facial features were very similar to those of the human race, but there were obvious differences. Obviously, these 4 were powerhouses of the alien race. They had mastered special spells and magical powers, so they dared to be so confident. Moreover, their strength was slightly stronger. 3 of them had reached the 5th level of the crossing tribulation realm. The leader's strength had reached the 6th level of the crossing tribulation realm. The 4 of them spread out and formed some kind of formation. Holding a special magic treasure, they flew into the abyss. The powerhouses around the abyss released their divine senses one after another, paying attention to their movements and situation. After a while, the 4 powerhouses of the alien race dived 30 miles, passed through the invisible barrier, and entered the depths of the abyss. Everyone stared at the abyss, secretly wondering how long the 4 powerhouses of the alien race could last. Time passed by bit by bit. About half an hour later, an angry dragon roar suddenly sounded in the calm abyss. Roar. When the dragon roar sounded, the abyss trembled again. Chapter 1786. There was no doubt that the 4 foreign race experts had encountered the glazed fire dragon, and the 2 sides were fighting fiercely. More than 30 experts around the abyss were all staring at the movements in the abyss. Surging crimson fire and colorful magical brilliance gushed out like spring water and flew high into the sky. Some weaker warriors hurriedly retreated far away, not daring to be too close to the abyss for fear of being affected. Earth-shaking fighting sounds constantly came from the abyss. Even the silhouettes of fiery dragons flashed across the abyss. After about 100 breaths of time, the loud noises dissipated, and the abyss returned to calm. The 4 foreign race experts never appeared again. Everyone knew without guessing that they must have been buried in the dragon's belly. For a time, many experts felt uneasy and even more fearful and worried. Some experts who wanted to take advantage of the situation could only give up the idea and make further plans. Some weaker experts knew that they were inferior to the 4 foreign race experts and had no hope of obtaining the glazed fire dragon, so they left wisely. Ji Tianxing was still the same as before. He hid in the mountain peak calmly and waited patiently. Next, the abyss was quiet for 2 days. During these 2 days, some experts came from all directions and gathered around the abyss. There were also some experts who lost patience and confidence and left the abyss in disappointment. 2 days later, another group of experts stepped into the abyss. This group of experts was an adventurer team. They had been exploring and searching for treasures in the ruins of God. They were quite famous in the adventurer world and were ranked in the top 5 forces. They had a total of 14 people, and the leader had the strength of the 7th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. The other dozen people were also elite experts, and their strength was above the 4th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Looking at the surroundings of the heavenly fire abyss, this group was the strongest and had the most hope of obtaining the glazed fire dragon. When this adventurer team entered the abyss, the remaining 20 or so experts were a little panicked. Their hearts were filled with hesitation and anxiety. They didn't dare to enter the abyss for fear of being killed by the fire dragon. However, they were also worried that the adventurer team would successfully capture the glazed fire dragon. Therefore, everyone was worried about their gains and losses. They were in a dilemma and their mood was very torturous. A few powerhouses weighed the pros and cons for a moment before following him into the abyss, wanting to get a share of the loot. Yun Yarrow was also a little worried. She sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianxing. Tianxing, that adventurer team has a lot of people, and they are all elite experts. I'm afraid they have a high chance of capturing the glazed fire dragon. Are we still going to wait? Why don't we follow them in and act according to the situation? Ji Tianxing calmly sat inside the cave. Chuckling, he said, "Don't worry. If that adventurer team had succeeded, the glazed flame dragon would have long since been snatched away. How could it have survived until now? They are the best cannon fodder, and they can consume the glazed fire dragon's strength." With that, he pointed at the southwest and northeast corners of the abyss and said with a playful tone, "What I'm really guarding against now are those 2 groups." Yun Yarrow probed with her divine sense and found that there were 9 tribulation stage powerhouses lurking in the southwest corner of the abyss. They were obviously in the same group. In the northeast corner of the abyss, there were 3 experts hiding, and all of them were women. There was a white-haired old woman, a middle-aged woman, and a beautiful young woman. On the surface, these 3 women didn't seem to be a threat. However, Yun Yarrow vaguely felt that the white-haired old woman with a walking stick had unfathomable strength. She frowned and asked, "Tianxing, do you mean that those 2 groups are like us? They are very patient and want to take advantage of the situation?" "That's right." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Those who are in a hurry to enter the abyss are all cannon fodder. Only the 3 of us have a chance of capturing the glazed fire dragon. Among the 3 women, the white-haired old woman is the strongest. I'm afraid she is close to a martial sage. She is our strongest competitor. As for the 9 experts in the southwest corner, their auras are very gloomy and bloodthirsty. I'm afraid they are evil forces or adventurer teams. Since they are so patient, we have to be cautious." Yun Yarrow nodded to show that she understood. She secretly observed the 2 groups of people. Not long after, an earth-shattering dragon roar came from the abyss again. Surging heavenly fire and dazzling magic power gushed out like a fountain, covering the sky for hundreds of miles. The commotion caused by the battle this time was particularly shocking. The entire abyss was shaking violently, and the surrounding cliffs and precipitous cliffs were shaking so much that cracks appeared. Moreover, as many as 20 tribulation stage powerhouses entered the abyss. The battle lasted for half an hour before it gradually came to a stop. In the end, only 2 powerhouses escaped from the abyss covered in blood. One of them was the leader of the adventurer team, a powerhouse in the 7th stage of the tribulation stage. The other person was an old man in a black robe. He followed the adventurer team into the abyss to take advantage of the situation. Both of them were seriously injured. Their auras were very chaotic, and their expressions were extremely frightened. The leader of the adventurer team had lost an arm. He desperately performed a secret technique and turned into a streak of bloodlight to fly out of the abyss. After escaping from the abyss, he flew away without looking back. The old man in the black robe behind him was very unlucky. He was about to fly out of the abyss and was about to escape danger. Suddenly, a huge fiery red figure flew out of the abyss. Swoosh! It was a red divine dragon that was hundreds of miles long and thousands of feet thick. Its entire body was wrapped in surging golden heavenly fire. Roar! It raised its head to the sky, opened its huge dragon mouth, and spat out a mighty stream of golden flames. The severely injured old man in the black robe had lost both of his legs, so his strength was greatly reduced. After being hit by the golden flames, he immediately let out a heart-wrenching scream. His entire body was burned into black ashes. In just 2 short breaths, his physical body was destroyed and turned into ashes in the golden flames. His divine soul was also severely injured, and he fled in terror. However, the glaze fire dragon waved its huge front claws and grabbed his soul, crushing it directly. The old man in the black robe was killed by the glaze fire dragon in front of everyone. Then, the glaze fire dragon let out a majestic roar. Its indifferent eyes swept around the abyss before it turned back into the abyss. Obviously, it knew that there were many powerhouses lurking around the abyss. It was warning everyone that if they dared to enter its lair, only death would await them. At this moment, many powerhouses were shocked by the power of the divine dragon. They were filled with fear and felt chills all over their bodies. In just a short while, 7 groups of powerhouses had fled the abyss. They did not dare to have any ideas about the glaze fire dragon. Only 5 groups of people stayed. However, 2 groups of people were hesitating and did not dare to act rashly. Ji Tianxing, who had been very patient all this time, suddenly changed his attitude. His eyes shone with a bright light. He looked at Yun Yarrow with a smile and said through voice transmission, "Yarrow, Yarrow, the time has come. It's time for us to strike." Chapter 1787. All the experts who had entered the abyss had been killed. Only one of them had escaped with serious injuries. After that, the glazed fire dragon showed up and warned everyone in a domineering manner. At this critical moment, whoever entered the abyss would be courting death, wouldn't it? Yun Yarrow looked at Ji Tianxing doubtfully. She was a little worried. Ji Tianxing smiled and explained, "The glazed fire dragon's intelligence is no less than that of human beings. It also knows the principle of what is false is true, and what is true is false. In the past few days, it has been besieged and hunted by various experts. Its vitality must have been greatly damaged. It can't maintain its peak condition. If not, it wouldn't have escaped back to the abyss to hide and expose its lair to everyone. This can only mean that it has reached the point where it can't do anything." Yun Yarrow immediately understood what he meant. She said, "I understand now. You mean that if the glazed fire dragon had maintained its peak condition, it wouldn't have been able to hide in its lair. The experts couldn't have chased it and found this abyss. Since it hid in the abyss, it proves that its vitality has been greatly damaged. Those experts who entered the abyss before were all killed by it. It's just bluffing to intimidate us." Ji Tianxing nodded and continued, "That's right. It's strong in appearance but weak in reality. That's why it showed up to scare everyone away. But it neglected one point. If it hadn't shown up, we wouldn't have been able to determine its condition. Now that it has shown up, I'm even more certain that its strength has been weakened. I've checked it just now. Although it tried to hide it, I could still sense that its divine soul aura was a little chaotic. In addition, there was a faint black aura in its pale golden eyes, which proved that it was injured. Moreover, the color of the reverse scale on its neck, which was hidden among the many dragon scales, was slightly dim. These signs can prove that its vitality has been greatly damaged." Yun Yarrow opened her eyes slightly, revealing a look of disbelief. She asked in surprise and doubt, "Tianxing, how do you know these things? Why do you know so much about the divine dragon?" Ji Tianxing didn't explain anything. He just smiled and pointed at his head. Yun Yarrow could vaguely guess that this must have something to do with Kenshin's memories. Just now, the glazed fire dragon only appeared for a short moment. You actually observed it so carefully and even discovered these problems. It's really incredible. After saying that, she used her divine sense to look at the other two groups of powerhouses and said worriedly, Tianxing, those two groups of powerhouses can no longer hold back and have started to take action. Could it be that they have also noticed that the glazed fire dragon's strength has greatly decreased? Ji Tianxing said with certainty, at most, they can only sense that something is wrong with the glazed fiery dragon's soul. As for the black gas in the dragon's eyes and the changes in the reverse scale, they definitely wouldn't be able to tell. After all, no one knows Shenlong better than I do. While he was talking to Yun Yarrow, the two groups of experts had already moved. The 9 experts from the southwest corner of the abyss were the first to enter the abyss. The 9 experts seemed to be intrepid and reckless, but in reality, they were very cautious and had a tacit understanding. They spread out, and 4 experts took the lead to open the path. The leader was in the middle, and the other 4 followed behind. Everyone flew down unhurriedly. Not long after, they passed through the invisible barrier and disappeared from everyone's divine sense range. Immediately after, the 3 women from the northeast corner of the abyss also entered the abyss. The white-haired old woman leaned on her walking stick and walked in front calmly. The middle-aged woman and the young woman followed behind, on guard at any time. After 100 breaths of time, they also entered the abyss and disappeared. At this time, there were only 3 groups of people left around the abyss. In addition to Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow, there were also 2 groups of Tribulation Realm powerhouses. The 2 groups of powerhouses became even more hesitant. They wanted to follow them into the abyss, but they were also afraid of the glazed fire dragon's strength. Ji Tianxing took a look. One of the 2 groups of powerhouses was from a sect. There were a total of 5 people, all wearing standard robes, and their behavior was relatively upright. Coincidentally, among these 5 people, there were Martial Lord Brightsword and Chen Yu. Ji Tianxing secretly sized them up a few times, then left the mountain peak with Yun Yarrow and stepped into the abyss. Let's go. It's time for us to go down. He and Yun Yarrow remained invisible. They passed through the raging flame vortex and approached the bottom of the abyss. In a short while, the 2 of them had dived 30 miles deep. A layer of dark golden flame light barrier blocked their path. This huge light barrier was like a golden mirror. It was a naturally formed array formation. Ji Tianxing used a small trick to break through the flame light barrier and continued to dive down with Yun Yarrow. On the mountain peaks around the abyss, only 2 groups of powerhouses were still hesitating and weighing the pros and cons. Although Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were invisible, these 2 groups of powerhouses were quite strong and could detect their auras. Therefore, these 2 groups of people were even more conflicted. Martial Lord Brightsword looked at the golden-robed elder beside him and said solemnly, Senior Brother Jin, don't hesitate anymore. Let's go down as well. The young man and woman I mentioned to you before also entered the abyss. That white-robed youth attracted 9 bolts of heavenly lightning and successfully passed through them. Chen Yu and I saw it with our own eyes. He also killed a 7th-level transcending tribulation stage powerhouse. We also saw it with our own eyes. I guarantee with my life that that kid is definitely the #1 monstrous genius on the continent. Since he dares to enter the abyss, he must have found something. We just need to follow him in secret, and wait for an opportunity to make a move. The golden-robed elder was tall and sturdy. His face and skin were bronze, and his pair of white eyebrows were very eye-catching. He frowned and thought for a while, then said in a solemn tone, Junior Brother Brightsword, I believe in your and Chen Yu's experience and knowledge. But the 2 of us are 2 of the 4 powerhouses of the Azure sect. These 3 juniors are the most promising elite disciples of our sect. If we rashly enter the abyss, if we encounter an accident and die under the claws of the glazed fire dragon, it will be a fatal blow to our sect. At that time, our sect will definitely suffer a great loss and fall from a first-rate sect to a third-rate force. Chen Yu thought for a moment and advised, Master, this disciple suggests that you reconsider Martial Uncle Brightsword's suggestion. Previously, there were already so many powerhouses that were slaughtered by the glazed fire dragon, and many powerhouses were scared away. However, there were still 3 groups of powerhouses that entered the abyss, including that adulterous pair. Could it be that those 3 groups of powerhouses are not afraid of death? This disciple doesn't think so. They must have discovered that there is something wrong with the glazed fire dragon, so they dared to enter. The golden-robed elder frowned. His eyes flickered with light and he was still considering. Martial Lord Brightsword continued to persuade, Senior Brother Jin, our Azure sect has already been bullied by the other two forces for hundreds of years and has never had a chance to turn things around. As the saying goes, wealth comes from danger. If we enter the abyss and are lucky enough to obtain the glazed fire dragon, everything will be solved. Chapter 1788. Under the persuasion of Brightsword Martial Lord and Chen Yu, the golden-robed elder considered for a long time and finally made up his mind. Perhaps, the glazed fire dragon in the abyss is our sect's greatest hope to reverse our fate. Since that's the case, let's take the risk and fight with all our might. After that, the golden-robed elder also led everyone into the abyss. After this group of experts entered the abyss, there was only one group left outside the abyss. These experts discussed for a long time, but in the end, greed defeated reason and they also entered the abyss. So far, a total of 5 groups of experts had entered the abyss, all wanting to obtain the glazed fire dragon. After passing through the natural formation light barrier, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow flew down for another 100 miles before reaching the bottom of the abyss. Beneath their feet was a dark golden desert. The terrain was uneven, and the ground was covered with endless yellow sand. Of course, the air was filled with manic crimson fire. The rocks and golden sand on the ground were also burned red by the crimson fire. The temperature was extremely high. Flames filled all directions. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were like fish swimming in a sea of fire. The two of them could not hear any sounds or movements, nor could they see their surroundings clearly. They could only slowly grope forward. I thought that the bottom of the abyss was a magma lake. I didn't expect it to be a desert. Yun Yarrow sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianxing as she investigated the surroundings. Ji Tianxing also held the Heavenpiercer sword and was on guard against the surroundings at all times. He replied through telepathy, "The celestial fire of azure glass in this abyss is more powerful than the one outside, and its temperature is twice as high. If I'm not wrong, this abyss is the core of the flaming mountain. It might hide the source of the glazed fire dragon." Yun Yarrow nodded in agreement. Yes, if not, the glazed fire dragon wouldn't have used this place as its lair. By the way, why aren't the two groups of people who came in first? The glazed fire dragon doesn't seem to have appeared either. Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a moment before explaining, maybe both sides are very cautious and haven't fought yet. I reckon that this area is very vast and there are too many places to hide. The glazed fire dragon won't appear so easily. As it turned out, his guess was right. He and Yun Yarrow had advanced for hundreds of miles in the desert, but they still hadn't reached the end. The size of the golden sand desert was much larger than they had expected. Not only that, the whole process was very peaceful. They did not find the other two groups of people, nor did they find the glazed fire dragon. An hour later, the two of them traveled 8,000 miles and finally arrived at the end of the desert. In front of him was a grotesquely shaped cave. It was very tall and wide. Countless caves of different sizes were connected together like a huge maze. Ji Tianxing stopped outside a cave that was thousands of feet high and observed for a while. Suddenly, he discovered something and hurriedly brought Yun Yarrow into the cave. In the spacious cave, there were a few pieces of gravel piled up in a corner. There were traces of sword chi on the ground, as well as a few pieces of armor. It seems that the two groups of experts from before have already arrived here and fought with the glazed fire dragon. As he spoke, Ji Tianxing picked up the pieces of armor on the ground. After looking at them for a while, he came to a conclusion. It should be that group of adventurers. Among the 9 experts, someone was wearing this kind of armor. However, when did they fight with the glazed fire dragon? Why didn't they make any noise? When his voice fell, a sneer suddenly sounded from the depths of the cave. "Ha ha ha. You're really observant. I didn't set up a trap for you in vain." This was the voice of a middle-aged man. His tone was cold, and there was a trace of hatred and killing intent in it. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow's expressions changed. They released their divine senses and probed into the depths of the cave. They saw a man in black armor walking out from behind a pile of grotesquely shaped rocks. This man was 10 feet tall and as strong as an iron tower. His skin was dark, and there were a few scars on his cold and ferocious face. There was a huge spider pattern. He had his hands behind his back. His aura was confident and domineering, and his whole body was emitting a cold, killing intent. Ji Tianxing immediately recognized that this man was the leader of the 8 experts. He had the strength of the 8th stage of the crossing calamity realm. He looked at the man in black armor's attire and vaguely guessed something. He frowned and asked, "You deliberately left traces here and set up an ambush to lure us here? If I'm not wrong, you should be the leader of the Black Feather Gang, right?" "That's right. I'm the leader of the Black Feather Gang." The man in black armor sneered even more. He said in a mocking tone, "You're very smart. It's a pity that you met me. You'll definitely die." As he spoke, he stepped across the sea of fire and stood 1,000 feet away from Ji Tianxing. He waved his hand, and a few figures immediately appeared around the cave, blocking the cave entrance and several passages. Those were 8 experts in the crossing calamity realm. They were all bandits of the Black Feather Gang. They formed a circle and surrounded Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. They stared at the two of them with sneers on their faces, and their bodies were bursting with killing intent. Ji Tianxing remained calm in the face of this change, his expression still indifferent. He looked at He Yu and asked, "It seems that you've already planned this. You've already targeted us before entering the abyss." "Of course." He Yu didn't hide it and answered truthfully, "Yi sent me a message before he died. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to save him. I had planned to kill you to avenge Yi after dealing with the glazed fire dragon. I didn't expect that you two would be so daring to come to the abyss of heavenly fire to die. If I don't tear you two into pieces, wouldn't I be letting down your good intentions?" After that, He Yu laughed wildly. The other 8 bandits also sneered unscrupulously. Everyone was complacent. They believed that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao couldn't escape and would definitely die. Yun Yao's face was cold. She quietly clenched the hilt of the reverse water sword, ready to attack at any time. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, remained calm. His lips curled into a cold smile as he said, "Actually, after I killed Yi, I expected this to happen. I guessed that I would definitely meet you after coming to the abyss. But I still came. Guess why?" He Yu was stunned. He frowned and asked with a gloomy face, "Why?" "Because." The sneer on Ji Tianxing's face grew even wider as he slowly said, "You clowns are nothing in my eyes." As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. All was silent in the cave. The 8 bandits were dumbfounded. Even He Yu was stunned. He stared at Ji Tianxing in surprise. After a while, he came back to his senses and said with a laugh, "Ha ha ha. I've really learned something today. It's the first time I've seen someone as arrogant as you. You're about to die, but you still dare to boast shamelessly and say such ignorant and ridiculous words. I really admire your courage." Chapter 1789. He Yu and the 8 experts were all enraged, killing intent burst out from their bodies, and a dazzling brilliance of mana lit up. "Kid, you are so arrogant that you are ignorant. Little bastard, you are courting death. I will cut you into 8 pieces right now. Chop the men into minced meat, catch the women and let everyone have a taste of them first." The bandits clamored with murderous intent, waving their swords and weapons, eager to try. However, before He Yu gave the order to attack, Ji Tianxing had already taken the lead. He waved the burial of heaven's sword as fast as lightning, slashing out a dazzling sword light towards He Yu. "Swing the sword." The 300-meter-long dark golden sword light burst forth with violent and fierce sword chi, sweeping towards He Yu in an indestructible manner. "Little bastard, you are tired of living," He Yu shouted angrily, pulling out his treasured saber and waving it. 3 dark red saber lights came and collided with the golden sword light, producing a muffled bang 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 sound. Suddenly, the saber light and sword light collapsed, exploding into fragments that filled the sky, splashing in all directions. The 2 sides were evenly matched for the first time, and neither side had the upper hand. "You really have some ability, no wonder you are so arrogant." He Yu was inexplicably shocked, angrily shouted, waving his saber again. Ji Tianxing's left hand pinched a seal, and immediately opened the entrance of the sword world. With a flash of brilliance, Ji Bai and Shohei rushed out of the sword world, appearing in the cave with a sea of fire. The two immediately scattered, waving their sabers and swords to join the battle, pouncing on the surrounding bandits. Yun Yaro also used her unique sword technique, waving the reverse water sword, slashing out dozens of ice sword light, fighting with the two bandits. Ji Tianxing stepped on the Big Dipper steps, holding the Burial of Heaven sword, in a confident and invincible manner, facing Heiyu head-on. Under his control, the Burial of Heaven sword seemed to come alive, turning into an illusory black shadow, constantly blotting out sword light that blotted out the sky. Hundreds of sword light, intertwined into a complex and profound sword net, enveloping Heiyu. Peng peng peng. Saber light and sword shadows collided, producing a series of dull and loud noises. The ultimate saber technique that Heiyu executed was actually blocked by Ji Tianxing, unable to unleash its power. The two of them exchanged more than 10 moves in a row, but Ji Tianxing did not fall into a disadvantageous position. With his wondrous swordsmanship, he was able to neutralize all of Heiyu's secret techniques. Heiyu was completely shocked. He revealed an extremely shocked expression and couldn't help but let out a low roar. Damned little bastard! How can he possess such terrifying combat strength when he's only at the first stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm? He was an expert who had gone through 8 heavenly tribulations, a peak martial lord who was second only to the martial saint. He was famous around the ruins of God and his might shook the world. As long as he did not encounter a martial saint, he believed that no one could stop him. But now, the white-robed young man, who was only at the first stage of the crossing tribulation realm, was able to compete with him as an equal. How could he not be astonished? He even had the misconception that he was not facing a young junior, but a sword Dao martial saint. Soon, 100 breaths had passed. The two of them had exchanged more than 200 moves, but they were still evenly matched. Unknowingly, the two of them had also left the cave and moved to the sky above the Golden Sand Desert. The two of them temporarily stopped fighting and stood in the sky above the desert, facing each other from a distance of 10,000 feet. The spacious and huge cave was also destroyed by the aftermath of the battle, collapsing into ruins. The 8 bandits of the Black Feather Gang joined forces to besiege Yun Yaro and Ji Bai and Shohei. They obviously had the upper hand. Everyone also left the ruins and the battlefield moved to the desert. Ji Bai and Shohei were both injured. Their robes were stained with blood, and their expressions were somewhat ugly. However, the two of them seemed to not know pain. They ignored their injuries and bravely charged forward to protect Yun Yaro. Yun Yaro was not injured. With the power of the reverse water divine sword, no one could fight her head-on. However, she could only injure bandits who were at the 3rd or 4th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. She could not injure those who were stronger. After all, she was only at the 1st stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. It was already very rare for her to be able to surpass 3 stages. The bandits' injuries were even more serious. Their bodies were covered with sword wounds, and blood kept seeping out, dyeing their robes and armor. However, these people were all villains who licked blood from their blades. They had been tempered by bloody storms and stepped on mountains of corpses and seas of blood to grow up. These injuries were nothing to them. It would only stimulate their ferocity and make them even crazier. Everyone's attacks were even more fierce. They were fighting with their lives on the line. They would rather be injured than let Yun Yaro and the other two go. Therefore, the pressure on Yun Yaro and Ji Bai increased sharply, and the situation became even more dangerous. The two sides fought fiercely in the desert and kept moving into the depths of the desert. Along the way, violent 5-colored hurricanes blew up, and waves of earth-shattering sounds exploded. Heiyu stared at Ji Tianxing, who was 10,000 feet away, and his face was as gloomy as ice. The previous fierce attacks had consumed a lot of his magic power. He took the opportunity to circulate his energy and adjust his breathing. Ji Tianxing was not in a hurry to attack. His figure stood proudly in the air with his left hand behind his back and his right hand holding the Burial of Heaven sword, pointing diagonally to the ground. "Heiyu, can you still laugh now?" There was a trace of mockery in the cold and indifferent voice. Heyu frowned fiercely. The veins on his face throbbed a few times, and anger surged in his heart. Kid, I really underestimated you. I didn't expect you to have such strength. No wonder you could kill Yi. However, it's too early for you to be happy. If you only have this little ability, you'll still die. As he spoke, a black light flashed in Heiyu's left hand, and a square disc array appeared. The palm-sized disc array was quite exquisite. It was engraved with thousands of array patterns, and there were 12 lifelike statues on the edge. Those statues were all strange beasts. There were pitch-black crows, ferocious-looking spiders, black scorpions, black snakes, and so on. The disc array floated in front of Heiyu. It spun and emitted a cold black light. Heiyu formed a seal with both hands and began to cast a secret technique, injecting majestic magic power into the disc array. Swoosh! Soon, the mysterious disc array expanded thousands of times, becoming the size of a palace. With a bang, it smashed into the desert. The golden sand buried the disc array, but an overwhelming black light gushed out from the ground, spreading in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the cold black light enveloped a radius of 50 miles, forming a huge light shield, sealing this area. In the sealing array, the turbulent colored glass heavenly fire was also dispelled, turning into a pitch-black void. Heiyu held a treasured saber in his hand, standing in the void, and sneered proudly, "Kid, now I'll let you see the power of the baleful black feather array. In this array, I am the master of heaven and earth, and you are an ant to be slaughtered." Dozens of miles away, Ji Tianxing stood in the pitch-black void, his expression still unchanged. Chapter 1790. Ever since it devoured the divine dragon crystal, the little black dragon had been in seclusion in the sword world. It was extremely diligent and serious. Now, it had reached the 8th firmament essence soul realm and was not far from the tribulation transcendence realm. Although it was oblivious to worldly matters and only wanted to refine the divine dragon crystal. However, it was suddenly awakened by Ji Tianxing and heard that there was a pleasant surprise for it. It immediately became interested. It hurriedly ended its cultivation and asked expectantly, "Old Ji, what pleasant surprise did you prepare for me?" Ji Tianxing said with a serious expression, "Considering that you have been single all this while, you might be lonely. That's why I came all the way to the fiery mountain, despite the dangers, to find you a wife." "Ah!" The little black dragon was instantly dumbfounded. It remained silent for a long time. The little black dragon, who had always been honest and upright, was a little dazed by this sudden surprise. After a while, it said in a low, muffled voice, "Old Ji, didn't you say that Qianyu and I should help each other and love each other?" "What do you mean love each other?" Ji Tianxing said unhappily, "I only said that the two of you should help each other. I didn't randomly set you up. Besides, the two of you are of different races. You can only be friends, not partners." "Ah!" The little black dragon asked weakly, "Then do you mean that you have already found a dragon?" "That's right. Furthermore, it's a divine dragon." Ji Tianxing answered without any hesitation. The little black dragon found it somewhat unbelievable as it pressed, "Are you sure it's a divine dragon? And it's female?" "Of course. I've already confirmed it," Ji Tianxing said solemnly. The little black dragon hesitated for a moment before asking nervously, "Then what do I need to do now?" "Come out and meet it." "Will it despise me?" Ji Tianxing persuaded with a smile, "Don't be nervous. It's not like I'm asking you to go on a blind date. What you need to do is very simple. Just come out and show your face." "That simple?" The little black dragon was rather surprised as its tone turned a lot more relaxed. Ji Tianxing hurriedly nodded. "Of course. Don't dawdle. It will be too late." As he spoke, he opened the sword world. The little black dragon did not doubt him and immediately flew out. Shua! In a flash of black light, the little black dragon appeared in the pitch-black void and circled Ji Tianxing twice. Seeing that it was pitch-black all around and that the world was filled with a terrifying suppressive force, it was a little stunned. "Old Ji, what's going on? Where's the female dragon?" Ji Tianxing patted its head and said, "Don't be anxious. If we want to see that female dragon, we have to deal with that guy first." After saying that, He pointed at Heiyu, who was standing in the void a few dozen miles away. The little black dragon showed no fear and immediately transformed into its divine dragon form. Its body swelled to more than 10 li long, resembling a pitch-black mountain range. After Heiyu cast the baleful black feather array, he had been controlling the operation of the array, silently accumulating the power of the array. At the same time, he was also observing Ji Tianxing's reaction. If Ji Tianxing tried to resist, he would suppress him with thunderous means. However, he was stunned to find that Ji Tianxing's reaction was a little strange. He did not seem to care about the array at all. Not only did he not defend or resist, but he was also muttering something to the treasure sword. Just as Heiyu was filled with doubts, a small dragon suddenly appeared beside Ji Tianxing. The little dragon flew around twice before shining with a dazzling cold light, and it instantly transformed into a giant dragon that was more than 10 li long. Heiyu was dumbfounded on the spot. He was dumbfounded. Heavens! A dragon! That's actually a black dragon. That damned bastard! How can he have a black dragon? At that moment, Heiyu was so shocked that his heart beat wildly, and he was petrified. He could not believe his eyes. Aside from the glazed fire dragon, this was the second time he had seen a divine dragon. Legend has it that there are only a few divine dragons on Shenwu continent, and they are all controlled by the 3 war gods. That brat has just reached the tribulation realm, but he also has a divine dragon? His aptitude is also so monstrous. Could he be the son of one of the war gods, a noble divine child? With Heiyu's knowledge, this was the only guess he could make. Aside from the war god's sons, he could not think of anyone else who could be as monstrous as Ji Tianxing, who also had a divine dragon. At that moment, Heiyu instinctively felt some fear, and his heart was filled with worry and lingering fear. Heiyu's strength was great, and he was the president of the Blackfeather Gang. He was quite famous around the ruins of God. However, he could not be compared to a noble divine child. The difference between the two was like the difference between the gravel on the ground and the stars in the sky. It's over. Our Blackfeather Gang has actually provoked a divine child. We're in big trouble now. Heiyu cursed inwardly. His heart felt as if it had fallen into an ice cellar, and his entire body was ice cold. But right at this moment, Ji Tianxing had already charged over with the black dragon in tow. Sky-splitting sword. Even though they were still 10 li apart, Ji Tianxing was already holding his sword with both hands and slashing out with all his might, creating a gigantic sword light that could split the heavens and earth. The gigantic golden sword, which was thousands of feet long, slashed down from the sky towards Heiyu with a power that could destroy everything. Heiyu immediately came to his senses. His cold eyes flashed with determination as he instantly made up his mind. Mother****. So what if you're a divine child? If you want to take my life, I'll kill you first. Anyway, in this abyss, all traces can be covered up. Even the war gods may not know. Heiyu made up his mind and hurriedly waved his palm to cast a spell, controlling the ceiling formation to block the sword light. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. 800 sharp black blades appeared in the void from all directions, forming a black sword net that charged towards the sword light. Boom. Crack. The sky-splitting sword and the black sword net collided fiercely, creating a thunderous sound. Hundreds of sharp black blades were smashed into pieces and scattered in the void. After the gigantic golden sword light broke through the sword net, its power was reduced by 70% to 80%. With a loud boom, it struck the ground. Instantly, a 20 li long gully appeared on the ground that was covered with golden sand and gravel. Huge amounts of earth and rocks splashed out. Ji Tianxing's ultimate sword technique was neutralized. He opened the third eye on his forehead and released endless thunderbolts. Thunderbolt. Golden, purple, and blue thunderbolts surged out like an endless tide, forming a 50-jong-long thunderbolt light pillar that blasted towards Heiyu. Heiyu's expression changed drastically. He was both shocked and angry. He hurriedly controlled the ceiling formation to block the thunderbolt attack. Illusory killing shadow. Under his control, 12 mountain-like phantoms were released from the pitch-black light shield, and they all pounced towards the thunderbolt. The 12,000 jong tall shadows were 12 kinds of evil beasts, including black crows, black scorpions, black spiders, black snakes, and so on. Boom. Crack. Chapter 1791. The sound of thunder was deafening, and the lightning illuminated the void for dozens of miles. The powerful shockwave spread out in all directions, causing a violent hurricane. The 12 exotic beast shadows collapsed, and the power of the three-colored sacred thunder was exhausted. It soon dissipated. Ji Tianxing and He Yu were tied again, and neither of them had the upper hand. One could imagine the shock in He Yu's heart. He was a cross-calamity stage 8 expert, and he had used a tribulation-level array disk to set up the seal array. He thought that any expert below the martial sage realm would die as long as they were sealed by the array. There was no way they could survive. However, Ji Tianxing had done it, and he had not been at a disadvantage since the beginning. Damn bastard, has he reached the point where he is invincible below the martial sage realm? That's impossible. Even if he is the divine son, he can't be so powerful. He Yu roared in his heart, and he was so angry that he was about to lose his mind. This was simply against the common sense of martial arts, and he could not believe it. At the same time, the black dragon pounced on He Yu, releasing his secret skill with all his might. He Yu took a closer look and saw that the black dragon only had the strength of the primordial soul realm. He was shocked and disdainful. Humph! How dare a baby dragon of the primordial soul realm be so presumptuous in front of me? He Yu snorted disdainfully, and he waved his palm to release a black light, which slashed toward the black dragon. Boom! The black light destroyed the magic arts released by the black dragon and hit it, causing it to fly backward. He Yu immediately chased after it, and he waved his saber to release a few saber radiances that were 1,000 feet long, which enveloped the black dragon's body. However, at the critical moment, the black dragon opened its mouth and spat out a black dragon breath. Swoosh! The black dragon breath passed through the saber radiance like a water column and hit He Yu hard. With a muffled bang, He Yu was blown away, and his body was wrapped in the black dragon breath. The incomparable cold air, along with the horrifying poisonous gas, immediately froze his physical body and penetrated into his body. Even though he used his internal energy to disperse the cold air, he still felt half of his body go numb. He completely lost consciousness and was unable to move. Black Feather was dumbfounded. He found it unbelievable that an Essence Soul Realm black dragon had such capabilities. Bastard! That brat is already monstrous enough. Why is his black dragon so strange as well? While cursing in his heart, He Yu hurriedly circulated his energy to resist the invasion of the poison. At the same time, Ji Tianxing swung his sword and shattered a few saber lights. Then, he charged over with his sword in hand. Azure Dragon Sacred Sword. The Sword of Burial of Heaven immediately expanded, becoming a gigantic sword that was 3,000 meters tall. Ji Tianxing also turned into a dazzling golden light and became one with the Sword of Burial of Heaven. The giant sword unleashed a destructive power as it slashed toward He Yu with all its might, accompanied by the image of a huge azure dragon. Boom! Half of He Yu's body was paralyzed and he was unable to dodge at all. He was immediately struck by the giant sword and exploded with a loud bang. He was sent flying backward by the giant sword. His entire left arm was cut off at the root. A large amount of black blood splattered out as he let out an ear-piercing scream. After witnessing the power of Ji Tianxing and the black dragon, he became even more cautious and did not dare to let his guard down. Next, he circulated his internal energy to suppress his injuries while manipulating the power of the sealing formation to resist the attacks of Ji Tianxing and the black dragon with all his might. The two sides fought fiercely in the formation and were locked in a fierce battle. It was impossible to determine the winner in a short period of time. Outside the sealing formation, in the Golden Sand Desert about 100 miles away, Yun Yarrow and Ji Bai were defending against the siege of several bandits. Originally, there were 8 bandits. After such a long battle, one of them had been killed by Yun Yarrow. The remaining 7 bandits had also suffered serious injuries and were dripping with blood. Ji Bai and Shohei's injuries were also very serious. Their bodies were covered with blood and crisscrossed wounds. However, their willpower was very tenacious. They had been clenching their teeth and holding on, swearing not to retreat. Yun Yarrow had consumed a lot of her magical power. Her face was pale, her hair was a little messy, and her white dress was stained with blood. I wonder how Tianxing is doing. Can he deal with Yu? Her heart was filled with anxiety. She was worried about Ji Tianxing's safety and the current situation. Without external help, it was impossible for her and Ji Bai to defeat the 7 bandits with their strength. It was already incredible that they could hold on until now without being killed. At this moment, Yun Yaro was looking forward to Ji Tianxing creating a miracle and defeating Yu. But at this moment, a huge fiery red figure suddenly appeared in the sea of fire above the desert. It was a fiery divine dragon that was 10 miles long and its entire body was red and golden. Obviously, it was the glazed fire dragon. It had shrunk its body by 10 times and quietly passed through the sea of fire, arriving near the battlefield. Its dark golden dragon eyes flickered with cold killing intent. It secretly observed for a moment. When it saw Yun Yaro and the bandits fighting fiercely, it could not help but reveal a mocking sneer. However, everyone was in the midst of fighting, and no one noticed its existence. A moment later, the glazed fire dragon seized the opportunity and launched an attack. A burly bandit had just been repelled by Ji Bai's saberlight and was sent flying backward with blood all over his body. The glazed fire dragon suddenly teleported over, raised its huge front claw, and slapped it fiercely. Bang! With a muffled explosion, the bandit was shattered by the dragon claw and his body collapsed on the spot. A divine soul escaped and flew into the distance in a daze, trying to escape. However, the glazed fire dragon waved its claw again and captured the divine soul, immediately crushing it into pieces. After quickly killing a bandit, the glazed fire dragon lurked in the sea of fire again, silently. 20 breaths later, it seized the opportunity to kill another bandit. Only then did everyone realize that the situation was not right and realized that something was wrong. The 5 bandits were filled with fear. They all stopped attacking and looked around vigilantly. Yun Yaro, Ji Bai, and Shohei also sensed that something was wrong. They quickly gathered together and slowly retreated into the distance. The glazed fire dragon did not hide anymore and rushed toward the bandits with a domineering aura. The bandits were scared out of their wits and fought back with all their strength. After an earth-shattering battle, 4 of the 5 bandits were killed by the glazed fire dragon. Only one of them was seriously injured and only a divine soul was left. He was lucky enough to escape. The glazed fire dragon did not chase after him. It immediately pounced on Yun Yaro and the other 2. Ji Bai and Shohei were both in a serious mood. With the determination to die, they bravely rushed forward to the glazed fire dragon. However, when Yun Yaro waved the reverse water divine sword to attack the glazed fire dragon, a strange scene appeared. The glazed fire dragon stopped attacking and turned around to escape without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, its figure disappeared into the sea of fire and disappeared without a trace. Seeing this scene, Yun Yaro and Ji Bai and Shohei heaved a sigh of relief and secretly said that they were lucky. However, after a few breaths, a powerful dragon roar sounded 100 miles away. Chapter 1792. In the desert 100 miles away from Yun Yaro, there was a huge black light shield. She knew very well that the light shield was the sealing formation released by Yu. Ji Tianxing and Yu were fighting in the light shield. And now, the roar of the glazed fire dragon sounded near the light shield. What it meant was self-evident. Her expression changed immediately, and she hurried to the sealing formation with Ji Bai and Shohei. Ji Tianxing and the Black Dragon were attacking Yu with all their strength. The 2 sides had already exchanged hundreds of blows in the formation, but they were still unable to determine the winner. Yu's injuries had been stabilized, and his broken arm had been reconstructed with a secret technique, so he was fine for the time being. However, right at this moment, a loud explosion suddenly sounded from outside the formation. The black light shield within a radius of 50 miles started to shake violently, rippling out layers upon layers of ripples. The northwest corner of the light shield seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, and dense cracks appeared as if it had been hit by some kind of powerful force. The sealing formation was damaged, and its power was greatly reduced. Yu also suffered from the backlash of the formation's power, and his body trembled, and his face turned pale. Ji Tianxing was not shocked, but happy. He took the opportunity to attack Yu, and raised his left palm to release endless golden flames. God-slaying spear. The mysterious and terrifying golden flames condensed into a 30-meter-long golden divine spear, and it instantly pierced through Heiyu's chest. Bang! His magic power shield and body armor were as fragile as paper under the golden divine spear, and they were directly shattered. The divine spear pierced through his chest, flew out from his back, and pierced the light shield of the formation not far away. Boom! In the loud noise, the god-slaying spear made another dent in the light shield of the formation, and many cracks appeared. Heiyu's body stiffened in the air, and there was a big bloody hole in his chest, which was penetrating from front to back. Black blood gushed out from the wound, and immediately dyed his armor and clothes. He lowered his head with difficulty and looked at his chest in disbelief, and his eyes were full of fear. He could not believe that he had been seriously injured by Ji Tianxing, and his internal organs had been shattered. In his chest, except for his heart, which was still intact, the other internal organs had been shattered. Such severe injuries had almost destroyed his physical body. Heiyu was furious and frightened. He immediately came to his senses, and used an escape technique to escape. At this point, he could no longer fight Ji Tianxing head-on. He had to escape from this place and find a place to heal his injuries. If he continued to fight, his physical body would soon be destroyed. At that time, he would have to heal for at least 100 years. However, just as Heiyu turned around and fled, a resounding dragon roar resounded from outside the grand formation. Roar. Immediately after, a deafening sound came from outside the formation. Boom. The northwest corner of the black light shield, which was already full of cracks, suffered another heavy blow. Crack. A crisp shattering sound rang out, and the black light barrier was shattered on the spot, and a huge gap appeared in it. Was Heli Yu Yu, Heli Li Li Li. Then, a second dragon claw also reached in. The two dragon claws tore viciously, tearing a 10-mile-long crack in the black light shield. Heiyu, who was running away, was hit by the power of the formation again. He staggered and spat out a mouthful of blood. At this critical moment, he was calm and decisive. Since the ceiling formation had been destroyed by the glazed fire dragon, he might as well give up on this formation and take back the formation disc underground. Swoosh. Under his control, the black feather formation disc buried underground quickly shrank to the size of a palm and flew back to his palm. He put away the formation disc and fled without looking back. How could Ji Tianxing let him go? Heiyu, don't even think about escaping, Ji Tianxing shouted angrily. He quickly put the black dragon into the sword world and chased after Heiyu alone. He turned into a golden stream of light and flew across the void like lightning, chasing Heiyu out of the desert. At the same time, the glazed fire dragon had torn the black light shield into pieces, and its huge dragon head went into the formation. Following a series of cracking sounds, the light barrier of the array formation within a radius of 50 miles completely collapsed and shattered. Torrential flames immediately surged in from all directions, turning the area into a sea of fire. The glazed fire dragon looked around and locked its eyes on Ji Tianxing, who was 30 miles away. Its eyes shone brightly. It seemed to be sure of something. It flew across the sea of fire as fast as a stream of light and rushed toward Ji Tianxing without caring about anything. Heiyu fled in front, Ji Tianxing chased from behind, and the glazed fire dragon followed Ji Tianxing. 2 people and 1 dragon passed through the desert and quickly disappeared into the sea of fire. 50 miles behind the glazed fire dragon, Yun Yao and Ji Bai Shohei also rushed over with all their strength. Everyone lined up in a line and started the chase in the desert. Granny Jin, the middle-aged woman, and Ronga were at the edge of the golden sand desert, cautiously observing a row of caves in front of them. Suddenly, Granny Jin noticed a strange aura in the desert and immediately turned her head to look. She looked through the raging sea of fire and saw the scene dozens of miles away. A 10-mile-long inferno divine dragon was chasing after a streak of golden light. She used her divine sense to look and found that the figure in the stream of light was the white-robed young man. This scene caused her eyes to light up, and she revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Great! I was worried that I couldn't find the glazed fire dragon's trace. I didn't expect it to show up on its own. It seems that the white-robed young man is very skillful to be able to lure the glazed fire dragon out. Jiyu and Ronga also released their divine sense to explore the situation in the desert. Seeing Ji Tianqing being chased by the glazed fire dragon, Jiyu was a little surprised and said with a strange expression, "Hey, that young man is really skillful to lure the glazed fire dragon out. But why is he being chased by the glazed fire dragon? Is he too weak to defeat the glazed fire dragon?" Ronga didn't think so much. She looked at Granny Jin with a worried face and begged, "Granny, that young man is being chased by the glazed fire dragon. Please help him. Although he is a peerless genius, he has just broken through the crossing calamity realm after all. He can't be the opponent of the glazed fire dragon. Now that he has lured the glazed fire dragon out, it is a good thing for us. If you help him now, you can make a good karma." Ronga was a little anxious. While begging Granny Jin, she also paid attention to the glazed fire dragon and Ji Tianqing's movements with her divine sense. Before she finished speaking, Jiyu showed a smile and teased, "Ronga, didn't you say before that you have no feelings for that young man? Why are you so worried about him now?" Chapter 1793. Granny Jin had been searching for the glazed fire dragon and had intended to capture the divine dragon. Hearing Ronga's pleading, she no longer hesitated and nodded in agreement. "Sai, you have always been calm and collected. Why have you become so impatient after arriving at the blazing mountain?" As she spoke, Granny Jin took Jiyu and Ronga and flew into the depths of the desert. While chasing the glazed fire dragon, Granny Jin did not forget to explain, "Of course I will capture the glazed fire dragon, but I am not doing it to save the white-robed man. Can't you see? That man is chasing an expert and the glazed fire dragon is chasing after them. With that man's means, I am afraid he does not need our help." Jiyu and Ronga did not agree with her and found it hard to believe. "This is impossible. Granny, no matter how powerful that man is, he is only at the first level of the crossing calamity realm. You think too highly of him. Granny, the glazed fire dragon is at the half-step martial sage realm. Only a martial sage like you can subdue it." Seeing that they did not believe her, Granny Jin did not say anything more. After all, she did not have enough evidence and only guessed in her heart. 100 breaths passed. The glazed fire dragon was chasing Ji Tianqing and had reached the edge of the desert. It was about to enter a complicated cave. Granny Jin no longer hesitated and used the teleportation secret skill to catch up. "I will stop the divine dragon first. You two follow me," she instructed Jiyu and Ronga telepathically and teleported 50 miles away in a flash. In the next moment, her body flashed with golden light again and teleported 50 miles away to catch up with the glazed fire dragon. "Evil dragon, don't be presumptuous." Granny Jin appeared above the glazed fire dragon and waved the dragon head walking stick in her hand. 4 dazzling golden lights shot toward the glazed fire dragon. Swish, swish. The 4 golden lights were like sharp swords that fell from the sky and pierced the glazed fire dragon's head, back, and tail. The glazed fire dragon sensed that something was wrong and its eyes suddenly became cold. Its body surged with heavenly fire and formed a layer of shield. Bang, bang, bang. A series of muffled sounds exploded, reverberating fiercely in the desert. The glazed fire dragon didn't have time to dodge the attack of the golden light. It was hit on the spot and fell from the sky into the desert. Boom. The ground that was covered in golden sand was smashed into a crater that was dozens of miles in radius. Sand and stones flew everywhere. The entire desert began to tremble as if a super earthquake had occurred. The glazed fire dragon's shield was destroyed, but it was not injured. It hurriedly climbed out of the deep pit and looked ahead anxiously. Ji Tianqing chased Yu out of the desert and into the maze-like cave. Seeing this scene, the glazed fire dragon roared again and again, letting out a vigorous roar. It turned its head to look at Madame Jin, its eyes full of hatred. Obviously, it hated Madame Jin for stopping it and delaying its pursuit of Ji Tianqing. Its intense anger and hatred caused its entire body to release a terrifying dragon's aura, causing a shocking hurricane to sweep through the desert. Swish, swish, swish. Dozens of blazing white tornadoes immediately appeared out of thin air in the desert. The endless heavenly fire and the golden sand on the ground were all swallowed up by the tornadoes. A total of 36 golden tornadoes tens of thousands of feet tall spread out in all directions. Suddenly, the desert was filled with sand and stones. It was extremely chaotic. Madame Jin was also surrounded by tornadoes and was in the center of the storm. She was in a dangerous situation. Jiyu and Ronga had just arrived, but they couldn't get close to Madame Jin. They were blocked by dozens of tornadoes. Madame Jin was not flustered in the face of danger. She stood in the sky with a majestic aura and looked coldly at the glazed fire dragon. Glazed fire dragon, there's no need to pretend anymore. I have long seen that your vitality has been greatly damaged and your strength has greatly decreased. Give up resisting. You are not a match for me. Submit to me obediently, and I can spare you the pain of your flesh. In these thousands of years, you have slaughtered tens of thousands of warriors. You have sinned so much that you have aroused the hatred of the powerhouses of various races. Only by following me can I protect your safety and wash away your sins. Madame Jin held the dragon-headed walking stick and shouted righteously. Her voice contained the power of suppressing souls. However, the glazed fire dragon stared at her coldly with a contemptuous and mocking look. Hee hee. You ugly old hag, you're too funny. So what if my vitality has been greatly damaged? In these thousands of years, there are at least 8 martial saint experts who have died under my claws, if not 10. With your strength of the first level of the martial saint realm, you dare to boast so shamelessly? You want me to submit to you? The glazed fire dragon's mouth moved and let out a mocking sneer. Its voice was very clear, like that of a teenage girl, and its tone was full of confidence and dominance. Madame Jin was not angry. She stared at it with interest and said in a playful tone, "You are indeed proficient in the human language and can speak it. Then it will be easy. I come from the ancient sacred clan, one of the leaders of the 5 great profound sects. I have good intentions and will not kill easily. Now I will give you one last chance. Abandon the darkness and join the light, and submit to my clan. I promise you that I will make you the guardian beast of my clan, give you the best resources and treatment, and help you to break through to the martial saint realm as soon as possible." Madame Jin's action was a combination of kindness and coercion. She released the aura of a martial saint to intimidate the glazed fire dragon and promised many benefits to it. However, she underestimated the dignity and pride of the divine dragon. The glazed fire dragon sneered contemptuously, "A mere ancient sacred clan wants to recruit me? You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Even if the 3 martial gods come to invite me personally, I have to think about it. Stinky old woman, you can give up on this idea. Get out of my way, or I will tear the 3 of you to pieces." Alas! Madame Jin sighed with complicated feelings and said with a serious face, "Glazed fire dragon, since you don't know what is good for you, don't blame me for being rude." After that, she made a spell with her left hand and waved the dragon-headed walking stick with her right hand, drawing dozens of streamers in the sky. Draw a circle prison. The 60 or so streaks of multicolored light scattered around the azure flame dragon and burrowed into the golden desert. Suddenly, a colorful cage with a radius of 30 miles appeared out of thin air and suppressed the glazed fire dragon. Madame Jin used the 6 directions to heaven steps and waved the golden walking stick with the dragon-headed walking stick. She kept making secret seals to control the colorful cage to shrink quickly. She wanted to use this secret technique to imprison the glazed fire dragon and take it away. However, the glazed fire dragon also burst out with all its strength. It opened its mouth and spat out a dark golden dragon breath, which hit the colorful cage hard. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, a large hole was blasted open in the multicolored cage, and dense cracks spread out from it. The dark golden dragon breath condensed into a light beam and hit Madame Jin, sending her flying backward.